On a day like any other, the peaceful world everyone believed would endure forever was suddenly shattered by the emergence of dungeons. Fear spread rapidly through the city as monstrous creatures appeared in swarm after swarm, instilling terror in all who saw them. Yet, just when despair seemed absolute, hope ignited amidst the chaos. Humanity awoke as a new breed of heroes, the hunters, and the strange, powerful materials dropped by the monsters fueled mankind's resurgence. Thus, the age of the hunters began. However, our protagonist is unlike anyone else in this new world. From the very start, it's clear at the Hunters Guild where a receptionist remarks that she has never seen anyone with his particular class, an uncommon designation called worker. In this universe where most individuals possess combat skills or attributes, he was born with a class that offers no apparent advantage in battle. When questioned about his talents, he simply responds that he has none, which is true. Later, we find him at a hunter's shop in Sector 7, where Yugi, the main character, is attending to customers. They came looking for potions, but a girl instantly identifies him and asks, "Wait, aren't you the one with the worker class?" He awkwardly confirms. She then asks if it's true that he has no skills or abilities, to which a companion nearby rebukes her, saying, "Don't say that." He quickly clarifies, she's a little confused, and the girl admits she understands. The protagonist assures her there's no issue, emphasizing that she hasn't said anything wrong. In truth, he lacks any notable talent or special trait, which is why he doesn't hunt actively. Instead, he quietly gathers resources and helps maintain their livelihood without drawing attention. On the street, some adventurers pass by, and everyone recognizes that a dungeon of at least rank 3 must have appeared nearby. The protagonist, observing silently, wishes he could participate in one of those expeditions, dreaming of what it might be like. But reality quickly reminds him that he will never join such dangerous ventures. It has been 5 years since he awakened and received this unimpressive worker class. Despite the passing time, he remains ordinary. No skills, no unique traits, simply existing on the sidelines. When the others storm into the dungeons, he waits outside, quietly collecting loot, which, although not lucrative, suffices to pay his monthly expenses, keep their shop running, and allow him to indulge in his true passion, reading books. Whenever the shop is empty, he picks a tome and immerses himself in its pages. That day, however, he felt unusually sleepy, attributing it to the book perhaps being too complex to comprehend. Suddenly, a loud boom startled him as a bright glow emanated from the text, captivating his attention. Startled awake, he found a sheet of paper slipping onto his face, causing him to sit up abruptly. This place, what exactly is it? He wondered if he was dreaming or caught in some illusion. He tried to open his status window, expecting some revelation, but found nothing extraordinary. In the midst of an unfamiliar, eerie forest, he found himself unable to hear any sounds from animals, and dense fog obscured his view in every direction. All he could make out were small sprouting plants nearby. Curious, he approached, puzzled by the strange flora. One of the plants seemed to be moving closer, and he remarked, "I've never seen anything like this before." Suddenly, he remembered the eerie grass that, when consumed, reduces the energy cost of casting any ability to 0 for 10 seconds. If such an item truly existed, it would be a remarkable asset. Essentially infinite mana, the vital energy used to execute skills in this world. The idea of wielding eternal energy for a brief period was incredibly enticing. He pondered whether he could extract this liquid from the plants around him, lamenting that he hadn't brought any bottles along. Just then, a leaf caught his attention, hanging from a branch nearby. He decided to examine it more closely and discovered that it was floating atop a small pond. Curious, he dipped his hand into the water, splashed some on his face, and suddenly, a new skill materialized out of nowhere. It was a level 1 plant friend, a blessing from the unfamiliar. Bewildered, he realized this was the first skill he had gained in 5 years of hunting, and all he had done was water a plant. To his amazement, the plant immediately sprouted roots in the soil. He thought it might grow into a giant, but then the roots vanished almost instantly. Within moments, he woke up in his tent, puzzled. For a brief second, he believed it had all been a dream. The realism of the experience lingered, however, until he noticed his hand covered in mud. Suddenly, he questioned whether the dream had been real, that perhaps he had sleepwalked outside, gathered mud, and even wandered into that enchanted forest. Or maybe, just maybe, he was transported there telepathically every time he dozed off, considering that in this world of hunters, such phenomena weren't impossible. Driven by curiosity, he decided to test the theory. He fell asleep again and awoke once more in the same mysterious forest. Yet, this time, everything looked different. The area appeared larger, and the fog had completely vanished. It dawned on him that he might be inside a personal dungeon, accessible only during his sleep, and he had never encountered such a power before. Nearby, he noticed a bright, sun-shaped apple, an extraordinary fruit. When combined with a healing potion, it boosted healing effects by 20% and reduced cooldown times by 80%. Knowing that potions were the most commonly used items within dungeons, he understood their value, despite their limited healing capacity of only 10% of health and lengthy recharge periods. Plus, the taste was often terrible. He looked at the dozens of sun apples and wondered what would happen if he brewed a potion from one of these magical fruits and the energy-giving herbs that granted infinite mana for 10 seconds. He considered taking a couple of items. Reasonably, it would be safe enough. Just then, a bag suddenly fell from above and landed on his head. Without suspicion, he accepted it. It was a dimensional pouch, allowing him to carry items easily. It seemed that someone was watching him. After inspecting the pouch briefly, he decided to return to his tent. The next day, he found himself in front of one of the most expensive hunter shops, an establishment renowned among the elite. The world of hunters was ever-changing, and he knew this place could offer invaluable tools for his journey. Eagerly, she made her way to a nearby potion shop, only to find the shelves emptied of all supplies. Just then, someone glanced back and remarked, "Hey, isn't that Jijin, the sword-wielding witch?" The shopkeeper approached hesitantly, nervously stammering, "Jijin, I didn't expect you to come today." She responded swiftly, "I came because I've been waiting for an update on the potion I ordered yesterday." "Where's that alchemist?" The shopkeeper looked embarrassed and explained, "Sorry, but your potion is still in the final stages of preparation. It will be ready shortly." Jijin shook her head, clearly pressed for time, and stated, "I can't wait. I have an important dungeon to delve into in half an hour." Reaching into her pocket, she pulled out her phone to check for nearby potion shops. Meanwhile, the young man was engrossed in alchemical experimentation, mimicking the techniques of legendary artisans. He combined purified water, tears from the Andin, and the rare herb of ear, muttering that the resulting concoction would be extraordinary. His next step was to add solar concentrate into a rotating tube. As he consumed the potion, the system's notification sounded. Due to the blessing invoked by the unknown benefactor, a verdict of great success had been granted. It announced that he had reached Alchemy Level 1, unlocking a special potion. Its effects included an unlimited duration for skill usage, raising the previous 10 seconds to 14, and it also healed 14% of health over a span of 15 seconds. This was far superior to all standard remedies. He stood in awe, reflecting that most alchemists, or those who called themselves such, did not possess these rare skills. He had never heard of a healing potion with a 14-second duration before. It was an excellent potion, yet he wondered about its commercial viability. Its quality was so exceptional that it was hard to sell. Who would believe that drinking ear would reduce the effects to 0 for only 14 seconds? When she entered the shop, Jijin immediately approached and asked outright, "How many of those potions do you have? I want them all, right now." Before he could respond, she moved closer and demanded, "This is a health potion, isn't it?" He nodded affirmatively, but she cut him off before he could say more. "What does it do?" she pressed. He tried to explain that it wasn't available for sale, but she interrupted again, "Sorry, I don't have time for explanations." She grabbed the potion and hurriedly left. Left behind, he wondered what had just transpired. She left some money on the table, saying, "If that's not enough, call me at Crest." and then she disappeared almost instantaneously. He was puzzled, thinking to himself, I hope this potion doesn't cause any problems. Meanwhile, the warrior had already reached the dungeon, unsheathed her blades, defeated 3 monsters, and was now racing ahead efficiently. That's true productivity. The adventurers collecting items for her seemed somewhat ashamed, but the power she displayed as a level 12 warrior was undeniable. The others, observing her combat, couldn't even see what was happening clearly. One of them, clad in white, muttered, If we keep going like this, we won't develop at all. Another tone-deafly added, Buddy, she's the sword witch. Even if you wanted to, you wouldn't level up. Just gather resources quietly and stay out of her way. But then the scene turned dramatic. A third commented, I understand her too. If she were truly Jijin from the old tales, she would have told us outright that she was hunting with a powerful poison and armor. Both of them looked surprised at that revelation, pondering why the renowned witch operated so discreetly. In a distant dungeon of the 4th level, a fierce battle unfolded. A young warrior named Yejin faced an imposing beast, determined to protect her comrades. She charged forward, drawing her mighty sword and brandishing it with unwavering resolve. The creature reacted swiftly, defending itself and launching a brutal counterattack, causing her to stagger under the force. Despite the intense pressure, Yejin managed to muster her remaining strength, having exhausted all her energy in the previous confrontation. Yet she knew she had bought precious time for her allies to escape. The 2 men accompanying her were advancing slowly, almost at a crawl, their movements sluggish and unsteady. Her mind raced with longing. If only her companion, the one they called Heisenberg, had been here to aid her. But now, driven by her own resolve, she decided to take a daring step. Without hesitation, she uncorked a potion, one she had crafted herself. She drank the entire vial and immediately felt a wave of confusion wash over her. Surprisingly, the potion was delicious, unlike any she had tasted before, and she sensed her energy levels rising dramatically. For the first time, she believed she could win this fight. Empowered by newfound vigor, Yejin plunged back into combat. Her sword flashed wildly in a tumult of strikes, cutting, slashing, and pounding without pause. The beast was overwhelmed, finally collapsing and crashing heavily to the ground in defeat. Yet, almost instantly, an unsettling feeling crept into her mind. Something was wrong. She noticed her health was regenerating at an unusual rate, and her internal energy was not diminishing as it should have. She had managed to maintain her furious assault on the beast for 10 seconds straight, a feat that normally would only be possible for about 3 seconds. Her gut told her that the potion she had just consumed was somehow special. Suddenly, a new figure appeared at the doorway, a mysterious individual from a nearby shop. Without wasting a moment, this person stepped inside. Yejin turned to ask about the potion she had just taken, but her mind was still clouded with confusion. Her companions, observing from a distance, quietly whispered among themselves, seemingly aware that she had defeated the level a creature alone. In her humility, Yejin apologized for her rudeness. Her companion simply nodded, saying it was all right, but he hinted that something about the potion might have been unusual. She confirmed her suspicion. She had never seen such a potion before. It healed a remarkable 14% of her health and decreased energy costs significantly. Her companion, naive as he was, remarked, I heard you took down a level a creature on your own. That's incredible. Frustrated, Yejin slammed her hand on the table. That's not the point, she declared. Where did you get that potion? Did you make it yourself? He pointed to a simple apple, explaining, I used this. It's a solar apple one found by chance in a beginner dungeon. Yejin raised an eyebrow. A solar apple in a 0-level dungeon? That item isn't very common. Clearly, he was reluctant to admit that he possessed the Forest of Prosperity, a rare resource. Feeling reassured but cautious, she tried to change the subject. She nodded and said, I'm glad my potion helped you. Then she pointed to the side and asked, What is that? He responded, It's an ice resistance potion. Curious, she inquired about its effects, And he explained, "It grants about 32% resistance to ice for 40 minutes. Yejin's eyes widened in astonishment once more. Most top-tier potions in the market offer only 10% resistance for up to 15 minutes. This one was roughly 10 times better. She was eager to find out where he had discovered such a rare item. He recalled that during his time in the garden world, he had found some winter strawberries and used them to craft the potion, saying his alchemy was now at level 2. Yet, as he finished speaking, a subtle suspicion dawned on her, that he might still be hiding something. But she decided not to press further and simply accepted the explanations, choosing instead to trust her instincts and focus on the battle ahead. Once again feeling uneasy, she decided to sell everything she possessed. She asked him and she asked her, tossing money onto the table and calmly declaring that she would pay in cash. She made it clear she didn't want any receipt. Our young man remarked that the sum was excessive. She responded softly that it didn't matter, yet she inquired about his name. He said it was Jia. She paused to consider, then remarked that Jia was a beautiful name. Wearing a sweet smile, she said farewell, indicating they would meet again. Suddenly, the scene shifted. The story moved back to our young man, now wandering alone in the forest. Each time he returned, he brought back more unusual items, but doubts began to grow in his mind. This place felt utterly strange. So many peculiar resources were around, yet no monsters in sight. Where was he? As he listened intently, he caught a faint movement nearby. Slowly, he crept closer, trying to discern what it was. Confident that something was lurking close, he approached cautiously. Then he saw it. A creature called a pterodrone. A mythical insect the size of a small car, resembling a beetle with enormous claws. The protagonist immediately recognized the creature. Strangely, these pterodrones were unnaturally small here. Normally, they were supposed to be about the size of a vehicle. He hesitated to pass, but a barrier seemed to protect them. Suddenly, some malicious ants appeared, and these tiny creatures began attacking each other. Watching the chaos, he wondered aloud, why are they fighting among themselves? The problem was that these demonic ants were incredibly dangerous. Yet, contrary to what they should have been, giant enough to crush a person, they now appeared diminutive. He saw the pterodrones being crushed, their tiny bodies pulsing as they were killed. Tears welled in his eyes. He questioned why they were fighting and realized that if this continued, they would all be wiped out. Suddenly, a notification appeared in his mind. Asterisk, the war between your cadron and the demonic ants has begun. Would you like to assist your legion? Yes or no? Asterisk, the young man wondered if he could interfere further, as things were turning stranger by the second. Mr. Hadron's voice echoed in his thoughts. Well, if that's the case, then yes. If his legion was losing, he could activate a special power, a essence booster, to improve their chances of victory. This would increase their HP by 30% for 1 hour, boost poison resistance, enhance physical resilience, or bestow the worker's blessing, costing 2 essences. He thought it over and decided he couldn't help directly, but he could aid them in another way. During his travels, he had found these essences, intended for power-ups, but he only had 2. The last option, more expensive, seemed the best, so he cast the worker's blessing. Instantly, the tiny creatures sensed a surge of energy coursing through them. Empowered, they began crushing the ants with renewed ferocity. They fought with remarkable speed, driving back their enemies. Watching this, the young man was delighted. This is incredible, he thought, as he approached the pterodrones and expressed gratitude for their efforts in defending the forest. The small creatures, in turn, started handing him many essences. He smiled faintly, and one of the creatures looked slightly puzzled. He took only 5 of the essences, saying the rest could stay. That's more than enough for me, he declared. After all, they fought to protect their lives. With that, the barrier and the fog that cloaked the area vanished, leaving only silence in their wake. I decided to stay here alone for a little while today, but it seems I won't be leaving soon. The next chapter begins with a discussion about the Hunter's website and the various communities that had formed when all this started. Currently, the sword which Jijin holds a rank of 12, and some users are debating whether she might have defeated that creature alone, though this could be false. Everything changes when someone turns on the light, asking, "Are you a zombie, girl?" This question is posed by Chun, the guild's most skilled alchemist, a red-haired woman who mentions she can focus better in darkness. She inquires whether he managed to complete the task she assigned him. The young man responds that he went in person. He is a hunter with the lowest rank of all, lacking any special traits or abilities. As expected, I didn't notice anything unusual about him. The red-haired woman then suggests that perhaps the cause of Yin's increasing strength isn't related to him. Shuyun adds that he isn't sure, but mentions he was selling something special. She asks if he knows what a solar apple is, but he doesn't. He explains that a solar apple is an unknown item, yet he does possess one, a rare object that drastically reduces consumption. He had never seen one in person until he visited that place. The strangest part is that he made a potion using it and sold it at a low price. The red-haired woman reacts by saying that if the apple is real, it couldn't be inexpensive. He tries to clarify that there are only two possibilities. Either he doesn't know its true value, or he is an unmaterialistic person without greed. She then stands up and states that she needs some fresh air and plans to check on the young man. When he offers to prepare a carriage, she declines, mentioning she's not the company's boss, though he insists she holds an esteemed position. Meanwhile, Chayan, the master of the Eternal Guild, returns to the Forest of Abundance. Jia feels some coldness but remembers she brought a lighter. After the barriers fall, she hasn't noticed many differences, though she has yet to explore an extremely dangerous-looking area. She senses it, but for now, she prefers not to risk herself and decides to head back. At that moment, small beetles reappear, carrying some items. Confused, Jia asks if they are back again, wondering what they are carrying. A flower called the Pursuer. The tiny beetles nod happily and leave Jia surprised, noticing that one of them is larger than the others and always at the front. She asks if he's the leader. The beetles do not respond. Suddenly, our young hunter asks if they came from that terrifying place. At that moment, a mission appears. The Cadron request help to rescue their queen. Accepting the task, Jia considers that it might be similar to what occurs with ants or bees. The seeds of the snow hunter flower are a common request. She reflects on her role in protecting the forest and thinks she will see what she can do. She fears that place but intends to decide later. All the little beetles are adorable, and her resolve deepens as she prepares for the next step. Despite their apprehension, preparations for the upcoming mission are underway. The group plans to set out the following day, having already crafted healing potions, antidotes against poison, and stockpiled ample supplies of food. Every member has been optimized with enhancements, and their leader declares their intent clearly. They aim to rescue the queen. As they approach, a daunting aura of purple energy emanates from a massive nest, towering at least 3 meters into the air. An unmistakable hive of demonic ants. Without delay, the battle ignites, fierce and relentless. The protagonist observes with amazement as the subterranean tremors suggest the ant troops are faring better than in their previous encounter. Yet, despite their improving performance, the venomous bites still pose a threat to them. The system informs him that he has a single opportunity to wield a special power aimed at aiding their efforts. This ability could bring the flying demonic ants crashing to the ground with a mere slap, yet it would cost 3 essences, an investment of value. Confusion clouds his mind. How can he afford to use such a rare power just once? Suddenly, a winged ant messenger emerges from the top of the nest. The system warns that if this envoy escapes, the main army will be summoned back. The protagonist examines his hand and wonders whether a slap could serve to intercept the message. Contemplating his options, he activates his skill. Just as the tiny messenger begins to fly away, a massive hand swoops in, and with a swift slap, the ant is struck down. He thought it was some formidable power, but it was simply himself acting. The story shifts to a new scene. One visits a certain shop owned by our hero. Standing outside, one considers the place. He recalls it as the seller of the solar apple. From the exterior, it appears to be an ordinary shop, yet mysteries surely lurk within. He learned that Een had managed to capture a strange creature after visiting this exact location. Curious, he decides to enter. However, he finds the shop closed. A sign indicates it should be open, fueling his curiosity. He wonders if the owner is in the restroom, as he questions a nearby clerk, who chuckles and explains that they are not open today. The clerk adds that they haven't opened since yesterday. The young man running the shop seems preoccupied, hiding something. When asked why the shop remains shut so often, he responds dismissively, blaming a decline in professionalism among today's youth. The protagonist senses a recent change in the shop's operations and considers that there might be something more behind it. Meanwhile, back at the battlefield, the ants are trembling after the slap dealt to their compatriots. The beetles, invigorated, surge forward in a coordinated charge, while the frightened ants retreat and sob. A little later, the beetles celebrate their victory. However, a question lingers. Will they attempt to rescue the queen? Observing the scene, he notices a few small beetles bringing in a makeshift stretcher. The queen, an elite warrior of the hive, is battered and exhausted. She tries to rise and speak with Jia, but he urges her not to exert herself. "You've done enough," he says softly. "Rest now." The system's voice informs him that the queen of the Terradrone has proposed forming a sworn alliance. Should he agree, he would gain their protection and multiple valuable items. Additionally, Jia is told that he must fulfill a certain promise to her. Our young protagonist was told there was no need for further deliberation. His decision was clear, and he would accept without hesitation. Recognizing their mutual potential for aid, the system then addressed him directly, saying, "You and the Terradrone now stand as allies. From this point forward, you can offer more direct support to the Terradrone faction." The youthful general, once merely a subordinate, now confidently evolved into a formidable warrior of the Terradrone. Impressed, our hero exclaimed, "Wow! Now you truly resemble a commander." He summoned the squadron, which promptly delivered a multitude of supplies. Standing modestly, Jia looked at him with embarrassment and commented that all these things were unnecessary. He'd be content with merely 10 essences and a little herb. Curious about the seeds they had provided, he asked whether they were wild seeds or fruit tree seeds. The others explained that he could simply plant them and wait to see what grew. He found it strange that a tree could produce fruit, pondering how such a thing might be possible. Nevertheless, he decided to leave it to the forest's natural process, trusting it would handle the growth. The plan now was to construct a new cabin. The following day, in a different dungeon, the group was in discussion. One member asked if they were certain the Ant Queen was present here. Jia replied confidently, "Absolutely. We could make a lot of money by robbing a nest." But another individual interjected, "Hey, wait a minute. What's that?" Suddenly, Yumi announced that the mission was already complete. Surprised, the others asked what was going on. They had just arrived, after all. When they examined the nest, they found it completely empty. The person who had been behind them remarked that someone from another region must have cleared it out. A knight explained that once a dungeon is emptied, it cannot be reopened. The group members considered this. One of them thought aloud, "What kind of coincidence is this? How did we end up in this situation?" Another member suggested that perhaps there had been an attack. One of the young adventurers said, "I didn't see any ants at all." The knight responded, "That's impossible. Look around. There must be some traces of them." They scrutinized the ground. One of them pointed out a large handprint and asked who could have made it. Several questioned the origin. Could it have been a giant? But at this size, it must be some sort of destructive beast. Panic spread as they started to run, shouting, "Let's get out of here." One of them told the others, "Do you really think we can stand against a creature that wiped out the entire ant nest alone? If we don't retreat now, we'll die without even knowing what we faced." Later, in an office at the city's 5th district, some members examined the palm print left by the protagonist, the successor of the important Yunsu. One analyst said, "This happened at the ant nest, right? If anything else occurs, let me know." The subordinate was thinking to himself, This handprint isn't that of an ordinary monster. It's far too large to be an evolution of any existing species. It must be some creature we've never encountered. Something above the destruction rank. He gazed out the window, thinking, I just hope that terrible thing doesn't come back again. Meanwhile, our protagonist waited in Area 5 of the city, until a girl ran toward him, shouting loudly. Jaya, looking remarkably similar to Herm, appeared suddenly, her presence palpable as she burst into the scene. In this scenario, UPS stumbled to the ground as clumsily as a fawn, prompting her to assist him in getting back on his feet. She reassured him that everything was fine, ensuring the safety of the book. He responded with a calm nod, stating that his main concern was not the book's safety but something else entirely. The girl, known for her wild, unpredictable mind, was Sun Yoon, the only origami hunter in all of Korea. What she did was a secret he didn't fully grasp, yet she claimed she hadn't left her house in quite some time, almost at the point of forgetting how to walk properly. Clearly, she was heavily addicted to reading. That was how she and the protagonist first became close friends. She handed him a small parcel, asking if he'd had breakfast, explaining that Jumi had asked her to deliver it. Grateful, she accepted a tiny book from him as well. Curious, he inquired about her purchase. She explained she visited a bookstore where the clerk was upset because everyone who bought a particular book always returned it. No one seemed to keep it for long, so she decided to buy the book herself and bring it to him. He found the idea of a book everyone returned somewhat unsettling. When he looked closer, he noticed it possessed a faint glow, an aura, indicating some kind of power. Suddenly, the system announced, "You have received the Infinite Spellbook. To cast a spell from this book, a special feather, the Thunderbird's plume, and ink are required." The boy asked whether she was sure the previous owner hadn't intended to keep that book. She assured him that the book was blank, merely used as decoration, as she had tried to write in it without success. She explained there was nothing inscribed inside. He thought that a blank book sharing this notification probably had a deeper connection, and perhaps she hadn't received the message because she was giving it to him now. She apologized, questioning if he wanted to keep it. He nodded, saying he would do so carefully and use it wisely. Back at the shop, he tried to write with a regular pencil but found it ineffective, realizing he would need the Thunderbird's plume to proceed. The system provided additional information. Thunderbird, a colossal and extremely rare creature with a wingspan of 25 meters. He wondered how he would locate such a creature, an endeavor far from simple, especially considering how unusual it was. The thought of just another person using the feather purely for decoration crossed his mind. Yet, when he touched the book, he gained an elegant handwriting trait and an ancient magic skill. Curious, he examined his hand, pondering this sudden ability. Nothing felt different, but acquiring the skill was no coincidence. He grabbed a nearby piece of paper and managed to inscribe a simple message about the Thunderbird, also leveling up his handwriting skills significantly. Despite that, he still couldn't write in the spellbook. He did, however, manage to jot down a description. Thunderbird, a 25-meter-high giant bird, extremely difficult to capture. One key feature of this new skill was that his handwriting had become much more refined. Suddenly, he sensed something nearby. Excited and cautious, he ran outside, where a door swung open right in front of the shop. The objective was clear: Thunderbird plume. Time limit, 1 hour. He paused to think. Could this be a result of his improved calligraphy skill? The aura around the area seemed dangerous, yet it was ranked 0, so it shouldn't pose a real threat. Confident, he decided to proceed. Stepping forward, he immediately spotted a waterfall and thought he had truly been allowed inside. Jia, observing this, questioned the situation. In the dense forest, the habitat of the ancient tree seemed too small to house a creature as enormous as a bird. Yet, suddenly the bird materialized, its mighty wings beating the air as it took flight into the sky. Jia watched in amazement, exclaiming to himself, "How is this even possible? It's as large as a house." Despite its grandeur, a few feathers began to drift to the ground as the bird soared away, seemingly saying, "Make good use of your trash." Curious, Jia hesitated, then reached out and plucked one of the fallen feathers. Holding it in his hand, he reflected on the thunderbird's feather and thought about how simple it could be to harness such power. All he needed was ink. A mischievous smile crept across his face as he formulated a plan. He called for some herbal extract, grateful for his small friend's help, and prepared everything necessary. Feeling ready, he stood before the ancient tome and wondered what kind of magic it contained. Eager to uncover its secrets, he touched the feather to the book's pages, and suddenly, a wave of enchantment unleashed across the forest. Objects started to levitate, and magical energy spread like a ripple through the woods. In the midst of the chaos, Jia collided with a tree and immediately recognized it. He recalled reading about similar runic symbols, words etched long ago on the bark of an ancient tree. Legend spoke of a tree that taught a tribe the fundamental magics: creation, harmony, change, and destruction. These powers were formidable and difficult to wield until the tribe discovered rune words during an expedition. He understood that this mysterious ancient tree had imparted those powers, and that the symbols carved into its bark were how the magic was passed down. It was astonishing to realize that these runes appeared both on the tree and now within the pages of the book. He wondered why they were inscribed on the tree and not directly in the tome itself. This was the same tree Jia had watered when he first arrived in this realm. Still, he doubted that such a small sapling could be the legendary world tree. He thought to himself, "I don't know when these runes might vanish. Perhaps I should write them down before they disappear." But then he pondered whether merely drawing these symbols into the book would activate their magic. As he examined the tree, the runes suddenly appeared on its bark, and Jia wondered why they were there at all. He remembered it was this very tree he had cared for upon his arrival here. With cautious optimism, he decided to copy the runes into his book. Surprisingly, despite being new to these symbols, he grasped their meaning intuitively. They represented destruction, fire consuming everything in its path. Encouraged by this understanding, the system in his mind prompted him, "Scroll of Change, Destruction." He realized that inscribing a rune increased its destructive power. His heart raced with excitement. If he wrote down the runes, they could be transformed into magical scrolls. Without hesitation, he tore the page containing the runes, watching as it effortlessly regenerated itself, like the pages of an infinite spellbook, exactly as the legend suggested. He marveled at this. His magical tome was truly limitless. This realization made Jia feel uniquely special, an unusual talent for grasping the essence of magic with effortless ease. His curiosity only grew as he looked at the book, contemplating how much he could achieve by wielding such boundless powers. All that was needed was ink, a resource anyone could readily obtain. The main obstacle was understanding how the ancient parchment worked. Increasing a magic rune's destructive power was all that the instructions said. However, lacking any magical ability, he couldn't test it himself. He would require a mage's expertise to activate its full potential. As he pondered, a familiar figure entered the shop. She approached swiftly, calling out to the young man, "Hello there." She looked directly at him, saying, "I will use you for this parchment." She then asked, "Are you the hunter Jia?" He nodded in response, confirming his identity. She hurried toward him, her face filled with urgency. Startled, Jia tensed as she shouted right in his face, "You're hard to find. I've come here countless times just to track you down." The protagonist reflected on her persistence. This situation was indeed tense. He offered a polite apology, explaining, "Due to personal reasons, I've had to close the shop frequently." Meeting her gaze, he silently wondered why she was staring at him so coldly. She meanwhile kept her own thoughts private. Her focus wasn't on him but on the items she sought, the treasures sold here. She apologized, expressing understanding of his circumstances. Then, with a slight bow, she admitted, "I apologize for the late introduction. I am the leader of the Eternal Flame Guild." She had heard that his shop specialized in rare and powerful items. She hesitated briefly, about to say more, but he cut her off. "Are you talking about the solar apple?" Or are you searching for the winter berry? She confirmed the latter. He continued, those are the most famous items we have here these days. But wait, since you've come so often without success, I might be able to help. She hesitated, puzzled. Was it really that easy to get what she wanted? She looked confused but asked, are you saying you can provide me with these items? The young man, however, remembered that in his focus on crafting runes and playing with tarot cards, he had neglected to prepare potions. He explained, if you return tomorrow, I'll have everything ready for you. She silently felt a mixture of disappointment and confusion. Her expression was a blend of sadness and frustration. Was she too naive or simply unlucky? Turning away, she decided, there's nothing more I can do now, and left, contemplating her next move. As she departed, she thought to herself, I just wanted to explore the dungeon. Yet, just as she was about to leave, the young man called out, wait a moment. She turned, curious. You mentioned you're the leader of the Eternal Flame Guild, right? You're a fire mage? She confirmed. He nodded affirmatively, then handed her a parchment. Here, try this. He assured her. I'm sure it will function like an explosive meteor bomb. She looked at the parchment, asking, what is this? He replied, yes, it's a fire scroll I made yesterday. I'm giving it to you so you won't leave empty-handed. She accepted it gratefully, saying, well, since it's from you, I won't refuse. She activated the scroll, and instantly, the shop burst into a fiery explosion, flames licking the air with a roaring sound. The message on the parchment read, it will burn everything. She chuckled at the phrase, saying she'd see him again tomorrow. He responded with a warm smile. All right, my client. See you soon. Yet, he couldn't help but notice that the rod on his back was shining faintly, much more than expected. Upon entering the dungeon, we find her in a spider's lair, recently clearing out the sentinel arachnid as the others push forward. Our fiery-haired companion unleashes torrents of flames, yet something about her flames feels oddly intensified. With a single strike, the creatures fall lifeless to the ground, and the rune carved onto her staff continues to shimmer brightly. She becomes momentarily distracted when a purple poison darts towards her. However, she deftly dodges it. Beside her, a young man asks if she's all right. She responds calmly that she is fine, though she finds it peculiar that the number of spiders is far greater than anticipated. The young man apologizes again, explaining that in the forest's dungeon, many factors can vary. If she wishes, they can retreat, regroup, and plan anew. But she dismisses the idea, firm in her resolve, saying they will press forward regardless of what lies ahead. The cautious knight suggests that it would be safer to turn back. She, however, with a fiery determination, declares she feels capable of overcoming anything today. She begins to conjure protective circles, and suddenly, flames erupt around her, engulfing all the spiders. Sparks fly as the area ignites, and her allies watch in astonishment. They ask in amazement, Leader, how have you risen so rapidly in level? Did you defeat all of them alone? She herself questions the strange surge of power surging through her. There is a faint suspicion that something is amiss. She notices that her strength feels overwhelming, something she's never experienced before. Meanwhile, back in the protagonist's shop, he finishes crafting an array of potions, solar potions and resistance to cold, satisfied that they will suffice. He checks the preparation, relieved that he's stocked sufficiently for the upcoming journey. Just then, Guan appears, greeting the protagonist warmly. Guan states he's brought the potions she requested, yet notes in his mind that a companion is nearby. Guan suggests they could buy more potions later and have a brief chat. Suddenly, she throws a sealed bag of money onto the table. Wow, what is this? Guan asks, surprised. She replies with a calm smile. What do you think it is? Money. Her words imply she's aware of his attitude towards wealth. Guan realizes she's the type of person who doesn't care much for money, which explains why she sells her potions at such modest prices. He insists that his prices aren't low because he despises profit, but because everyone appreciates accessible magic supplies. She explains that the large sum is connected to the scroll she received yesterday, an item of power so potent it surpasses the normal grade S magical artifacts. The scroll's strength feels almost too great for her to possess without consequence. She remarks that the scroll is so formidable that it seems almost criminal to take it without paying. Moreover, she wouldn't feel right unless she offers something in exchange. Guan nods in understanding, though he inwardly marvels at the power of the ancient spellbook. The infinite spellbook, as he knows it, is truly extraordinary. She then suggests that if he doesn't want cash, he can simply provide her with his bank account details. The protagonist, being courteous and considerate, declines politely, expressing his gratitude but insisting he cannot accept money for her gift. She asks what he means. He explains that, as he mentioned, the scroll was a token of apology for making her wait, and he considers himself not honorable enough to accept such a sum. In his mind, he simply wanted to give her the scroll as a gesture of trust and respect. She remarks softly that he clearly understands the value of that gift, and in an instant, a new connection begins to form. A person can easily become naive, trusting too much. Imagine a hen that lays golden eggs, giving them away freely to everyone. What might happen to such people? Our young hero responds simply, "They all would become rich." The elder corrects him immediately, "Absolutely not. Once news of such a hen spreads, everyone will want to get their hands on her." This makes it clear that possessing such a rare gift is both incredible and dangerously tempting. At this moment, the young man understands the gravity. His mentor continues, "That's why your talent is so remarkable yet so perilous." The protagonist nods in acknowledgement. The elder then offers, "I have a proposal for you." The young man, puzzled, asks what it is. The elder explains, "Would you consider joining the Guild of the Eternal Flame?" She admits that her earlier presentation might have seemed somewhat negative when she first arrived, but it was only out of concern. Our guild adheres strictly to ethical standards and never harms others. The reason I brought money was to show that we can certainly reward talented individuals like you. She adds, "The Guild of the Eternal Flame is already well known, so there was no real need to go to such lengths to prove our worth. I wanted to show that a guild as renowned as ours genuinely values its members. In addition," she points out, "we have many powerful mages and skilled alchemists. Our guild's headquarters contain numerous workshops and facilities for advanced research." The head alchemist, Shuyun, speaks with a distorted voice. "At our guild, you would have the chance to undertake extensive experiments. Your salary and benefits would be as generous as you desire." He continues, "You might even hold a leadership position commanding respect and authority." The young man looks visibly hesitant. He listens carefully as she adds, "Joining us could prove very beneficial." Jia, standing nearby, interrupts politely. "Thank you for your kindness," she remarks, initially expressing joy. But then, she pauses and questions herself. "Wait, do you only accept kindness? You don't want to join?" She wonders why the offer is so generous. The elder explains kindly, "As I said, it might be a bit much for someone like you. I believe there are others better suited for the guild." The elder insists, "Please, you're more than capable. You shouldn't dismiss yourself so easily." Behind her, a young man speaks up, "All right, leader, I understand. Let's calm down." Jia responds, "No, she's undervaluing herself. She can't be so modest." She clarifies, "Originally, I was just a low-ranked hunter with no special attributes. The reason I can craft these unique items isn't purely due to my skills. It's luck and my friends, like the Beatles and the girl who gifted me that book." She continues softly, "Everything I have achieved was thanks to fortune and those around me. One day, I might lose that luck, and I don't have enough confidence to accept such a generous offer. I don't know how long I can keep doing this. Besides, I'm very attached to this place, and suddenly leaving isn't easy for me." The elder looks confused, but the young man behind her speaks again. "Leader, it seems her mind won't change easily. We should respect her decision." She remains thoughtful, uncertain. Jia, noticing her own hesitation, responds, Of course. Thanks to your advice, I'll be more cautious. I'll start charging a bit more for my potions. She quickly adds, but don't tell anyone it was my idea. She sighs softly and admits, well, I don't really like this feeling, like being rejected in a relationship. But I suppose I have no choice. In times of need or peril, just call out to me. Jay will be there to reassure you. If any danger approaches, this little boy here will alert us. He has a small bell attached to him that rings softly whenever threats are nearby. Later, the scene transitions to a glimpse of the postgate world, illustrating how challenging life has become amidst the natural landscapes. Oceans, beaches, forests, and mountains, now overrun by monsters. Yet, the Forest of Dreams remains a place Gia finds solace in. It's truly a calming refuge. The ocean, Gia reflects, is the best remedy for a headache, a notion that brings him comfort. He thought that his dreams would only feature woods, but to his surprise, the sea is also present, making this place feel like an earthly paradise. Initially planning to spend more time within his tent rather than wandering the forest, Gia realizes that this morning has shifted his intentions. Clearly, he's not the most skilled at tending fires or preparing food, so he decides to take a break, indulge in hearty meals, and immerse himself in books. Tired of constant struggle, he contemplates his situation quietly, spending hours alone in the forest, reading until sleep overtakes him. What Gia doesn't realize is that unexpected visitors are on their way. 2 hours earlier, Gia was happily lost in his thoughts, enjoying the peaceful sound of the sea, a rarity nowadays, given that monsters now dominate the coastlines. Being in a cave like this feels almost divine. He thought it would be wonderful to bring friends here someday. Suddenly, he hears a soft meow nearby. Curious and unafraid, he approaches to investigate. The small plant bell, which should emit sound if danger is near, remains silent, indicating safety. Gia notices a beetle flying in his direction and wonders why it's heading there. When he reaches the spot, he finds a creature larger than a typical cat but not quite a tiger. It's clearly injured, and Gia contemplates whether he should help. The creature, called a tadron, approaches with a gentle tap on its shoulder, turning around to reveal some fish brought by others. These beetle-like beings work astonishingly quickly. Pleased by their assistance, Gia pets the creature, feeling a sense of satisfaction. The tadron, having eaten the fish and drunk a potion, finally stops trembling. Intrigued, Gia asks, "Where do you come from? I didn't expect to find animals in this forest." The cat, who responds with a soft meow, apologizes for waking him and continues to be gently petted. Gia thinks about a name for his new companion. Since the creature resembles a tiger, he chooses the name Biam, which means tiger in Korean. Gia offers, "If you have no place to go, come with me." Curious if he can take Biam to his tent, Gia considers his options. When Gwayan arrives at the camp, her eyes widen in surprise. "What is that?" she asks. Gia introduces, "This is Biam." Gwayan exclaims in astonishment, "He's not a tiger," confounded by the creature's appearance. Gia's mind flickers with thoughts of how she might react. Een, bringing coffee, remarks, "Our boy is giving us this for free." Meanwhile, the tiny feline begins approaching, and Gia quickly steps back, apologizing for the disturbance. He decides that Biam will live with him from now on, feeling a sense of relief. Despite her initial surprise, Gia notices that Biam remains quietly seated, smiling softly, and seeming to desire some affection. Een nervously reaches out and pets him, the scene unfolding with gentle familiarity amidst their rugged surroundings. Een watched Patricia, who seemed to mistake softness and fluffiness for innocence, and thought she was merely a name. As Een continued to listen, he recalled that she had mentioned distributing some scrolls for free. It was all over the internet. Everyone was talking about it. Een responded calmly, confirming that she'd given away scrolls worth over 100 million units without asking for anything in return. He wondered if she lacked ambition or was simply stubborn. Clearly, she had been living her life without excessive calculations or greed, aiming instead to make others feel at ease. That was why she often sought to return to that particular shop. Suddenly, a disturbance shook the ground. The tremor was intense. Ian immediately thought it might be a city-level emergency alert, signaling a level 4 catastrophe. An urgent evacuation was to be executed without delay. Outside, military tanks rolled in, compelling everyone to leave the area swiftly. Amid the chaos, a young man stood with a white cat in the crowd, unalarmed by the commotion. Level 4 catastrophes were exceedingly dangerous. Jia knew they would need formidable hunters to manage the crisis and hoped that the available team could hold out temporarily. Minutes later, they reached a bunker. The earth continued to shake beneath their feet. It was the end of normalcy as fierce battles raged underground. Many people there cried out in fear. Jia, thinking to herself, felt it was too soon to be truly safe. She stroked Biam, who was also frightened, silently praying that the catastrophe would not escalate further. Above, the disaster was unfolding with terrifying intensity. Such chaos frequently happened when hunters entered a dungeon only to fail. When the mission failed in a lower-level dungeon, it was challenging but manageable. An entirely different story when a level C or higher dungeon collapsed. In those moments, the government had a plan. Evacuate all civilians within a 20-kilometer radius. Snipers were positioned everywhere, and hunters were called to prepare. This is the first effective government response I've seen, Jia muttered as Ian announced the earliest signs of intrusion. The initial threats were giant skeletons. The army was here. Missiles, torpedoes, explosions filled the air. Look at that, Ian observed. The military is really doing something now. Analyzing the situation, Ian recognized that the dungeon had likely housed weak monsters. However, considering their formidable combat power, there was no reason to believe it would be too difficult to handle. He ordered the military to target only those creatures emerging from the portal, while the defenders focused on the escapees. Suddenly, a massive hand appeared. Ian recognized it instantly, a monstrous creature of frightening size. Without hesitation, he shifted tactics. All units concentrated on the giant beast. Missiles, bombs, bullets, everything was unleashed. One torpedo hit its mouth and exploded, but the creature remained largely unscathed. It was still intact, glaring at everyone. No enemy creature could be allowed to survive. They had to eliminate it. Imio shouted a command to keep everyone clear. "Friend, get back. You're about to be crushed." The beast, acting as a massive decoy, passed overhead, heading directly toward the group. As they made their way toward the refuge, Ian suddenly leapt into the path, blocking their way. The tumult of his sword echoed through the air, signaling his readiness for battle. One, who was also present, looked on carefully, holding a scroll that he launched with a precise laser beam towards the creature. Yet, the beast remained unconcerned, its large frame undeterred, and it continued its relentless advance. Without hesitation, Ian struck the creature in the stomach, forcing it to stumble momentarily. "You're in trouble now, Guan," the eccentric mage shouted urgently. "Don't chase after it. If we don't defend ourselves, who will save everyone?" The creature then turned to face Jay, declaring, "I've found you." However, fear flickered in its eyes. Something was wrong. Jay paused to think. How could the barrier have fallen so easily? It suggested they weren't winning outside, yet its legs felt paralyzed, refusing to respond. When at last movement returned, the creature almost caught him, but Biam swiftly pushed him back and unleashed a freezing blast. Standing in front of Jay, Biam stared fiercely at the creature, which trembled with fear. "What are you afraid of?" Biam's voice echoed in the creature's mind. It listened as Biam harshly whispered, "You're an inferior beast. Leave now." From the shadows, Ian and Guan realized the creature had halted in its attack. They saw an opportunity. Ian fired a colossal blast of fire, engulfing his sword in flames and slicing through the beast. The creature was reduced to charred remains, collapsing onto the ground exhausted. Guan asked whether the fight was over. Yejin replied, "No, I sense a massive concentration of ether within it." The little cat, now peaceful in Jaya's arms, appeared unharmed. Moments later, emergency vehicles arrived, transporting the wounded. Ian felt the ether's presence fading from his senses. As he looked at Biam, he wondered whether this victory had come from him. Their boy was now safe at home after a hot bath, reflecting on the chaos of the day. He gently stroked Biam, thinking how terrifying it had seemed moments ago. Yet now everything was calm. The protagonist continued contemplating the creature, deciding to write about it just to document what had happened. It was a monstrous being, 15 meters tall, grotesque as hell, and immensely powerful. There was a website dedicated to cataloging all monsters, but no one knew how Kido managed to add new entries. Strangely, when their boy wrote in the book, the creature also appeared on the wiki. Yunsu was puzzled. How are these entries being updated? He wondered. Meanwhile, the boy calmly recorded everything, the scene unfolding before him. Later, the story shifted to a gathering of hunters discussing the incident. They focused especially on the cause of the creature's death, suspecting that one of their own might not have been responsible. They wondered why the beast remained trapped after breaking the wall, pondering whether it could have been a human inside. But that idea seemed nonsensical. How could a human possess such power? Junsu pointed out that the wiki's update marked the first in a long while. Surely, something formidable was approaching. Ian guessed that whatever frightened the creature was powerful enough to scare even it. He then speculated that the source of terror might have been either an insider or a hunter with an unknown ability. Guan added that several witnesses had heard a cat's cry when the creature froze, though Jun-suk was quick to dismiss that detail. Nothing about that really mattered. One hesitated for a moment before responding, perhaps, but inside, the owner of the potion shop stood with his snow leopard, silent and watchful. Since the creature had frozen, the three of them had headed toward our protagonist's store. He greeted them warmly. "Hello, how are you?" Without a word, the three of them approached and slammed their fists onto the counter, demanding, "Where's the cat? We want to see him." Biam, visibly startled by their frantic attitude, tried to calm them. "You'll scare him," Jia warned sharply, noticing how close Biam had gotten and how he was stretching out his hand toward the feline. The others looked on, confused. One carefully picked up the cat, studying him closely. "Hey, is this the creature responsible for that surge of ether? He looks like any normal cat," he remarked skeptically. Jia stepped in and warned, "It's better not to handle him like that." But her words went ignored. One, unconcerned, held the cat firmly and declared, "I don't sense any ether emanating from him. It's impossible for him to have caused such an explosion without us detecting it." Suddenly, Diem bit into one's arm. Jia quickly warned, "I told you so. Be careful with him." Ian added, "I heard that during the explosion, many people sensed the sound of a cat just before the creature froze." As they discussed the bizarre event, our protagonist responded with disbelief. "That's crazy," he said softly. Junsu adjusted his glasses and mused, "I think those are just rumors." Poor Junsu turned to Guan, pondering silently. He had hoped to recruit the boy into his guild, but the timing wasn't right. Little did he know, she had already been rejected. As they prepared to leave, Guan remarked with a teasing tone, "Aren't you going to ask to join the guild? I wanted to see you rejected." Meanwhile, Jijin offered a small, inviting smile, trying to charm our main character. He replied coolly, "I'll consider it when I'm ready." But he wasn't genuinely interested. Later, he relaxed in the woods, reading a book about the continent of Gin, a land where different species live together beneath a magnificent great tree. This sacred tree was said to have birthed beings revered as gods of nature to protect Gin. One of the descriptions in the book illustrated a creature resembling a white cat with black spots. As Biam looked on, Jia thought to herself, "Wait, is that him? A god of nature? But this cat is so small. It hardly seems divine." Still, considering how he had stopped that other creature, it started to make sense. There was no coincidence in the ether explosion. It had to be Biam. Perhaps he truly was a god of nature. The great tree in her dream actually felt significant now. Everything began to align, as if the tree was assigning him a task. It all seemed to have started when he received his class as a worker, helping the gods, saving Biam. It was part of a larger plan. Suddenly, the book beside him glowed. Strangely, inside the class description it read Worker of Kisses. What could that mean? The words flashed through her mind like a sudden burst of insight. The next chapter shows a girl in a secluded room, watching television. A news report describes a bombing somewhere far away. Back in our protagonist's perspective, he gazes at the great tree and asks aloud, "Was it you? Did you bring me to this forest of dreams?" "I have no idea." "Certainly. Here's a deeply rephrased and polished version of your text, crafted into a clear, elegant, and smoothly flowing narrative suitable for narration." Why was I given such an important task? There must be a reason, so I will do my best to succeed. Suddenly, a swirling purple tornado materializes beside me, and something begins to take shape. A distant voice echoes, chanting a dark incantation. "Curse all that breathes. Bring death to every living soul." From the shadows, a skeletal figure emerges. Not just one, but an entire horde of undead skeletons surges forth into the forest. I recognize the creature as an ancient lich, a being of terror and incredible power. Its size is astonishing. It towers above the trees, yet strangely, it seems somewhat smaller than expected. Still, its presence is a force of chaos. The lich commands in a cold, commanding voice, "Kneel before the master." The system promptly alerts me. The ancient lich threatens to corrupt nearby lands, and soon, those effects will spread to my territories. An immediate counterattack is difficult, so I must consider whether I can weaken its influence somehow. My decision is clear. I accept the challenge. The lich begins summoning all its minions, which is strange, almost surreal to imagine. If this feline creature were normal-sized, amidst the much larger lich. Just how big is this cat in reality? The lich marches with its followers, a relentless wave of undead. I merely want to strike it, to give it a slap, but such an act is impossible. Remember, liches do not die unless their source of life is destroyed. The system has assigned me that very task. I must also go a step further. Purify the lands tainted by the lich's corruption. In the distance, I see a small castle. I recognize it. Perhaps I've seen it before. It bears the banner of the Kingdom of Estran. Could the skeletons it commands be the local inhabitants? I choose not to dwell on that now. The priority is to claim this territory. Since I cannot intervene directly, I need to deploy my army. I call upon the Terrid drones. The problem is, only my warrior can fly. The others are blocked by a massive boulder obstructing the path. I have two options. Spend a fragment of essence to clear the obstacle or let the drones handle it. Hurrying, I decide to use the essence. I command the drones into a one-on-one duel, trusting in their strength. Begin the combat, Jia advises. The duel unfolds, and now, with their power boosted, the drones resemble a formidable troop. The lich attempts to reinforce its forces, but it's failing. It raises its staff to cast a spell, an area of effect attack. Just as the spell is about to unleash, the warrior drone arrives and halts the incantation. I breathe a sigh of relief. Aid has arrived just in time. The drones seize the lich's staff and throw it to the ground. Its magical weapon shatters into fragments. Only the broken staff remains. Though confident, the lich dismisses it. It's only a body, a mere undead husk. Still, Jia perceives that someone had already been dispatched to search for the lich's vital source of life. But the drone that found it isn't powerful enough to destroy it outright. Therefore, I must invest 5 essence to evolve the drone into a warrior, an upgrade crucial to my plans. Seizing the opportunity while the lich is broken into pieces, I spend the essence. The drone begins to transform, gaining armor and new abilities. I thought I had already evolved the one I fought earlier, but this one is different. I will use it now to bring about the final blow. Let me know if you'd like me to refine or expand on any part of this version. Once, the sturdy chest had been ordinary, but it gradually evolved into a formidable fortress, reinforced and made even more resilient. The lich, in a desperate bid, reconstructed the fortress and screamed in frustration, trying to halt its growth, but time was against him. Suddenly, a Pterodrone delivered a powerful headbutt, disintegrating the fortress and defeating the Lich's minions. Our hero rejoiced, celebrating their victory. The troop returned carrying several small chests, amusingly tiny in their hands, though likely enormous in real life. Jia felt a touch of embarrassment and expressed gratitude, while the small creatures also looked embarrassed. The strongest Pterodrone carried a chest that, once placed before him, expanded back to its true size. The hero eagerly opened it, discovering the Sword of the Stram Realm, a rare artifact with a single extraordinary attribute, +5 to the conqueror's mental strength and charisma. In reality, he considered himself merely a worker, lacking offensive stats or prowess. He pondered whether the rightful owner might still be alive and hoped to return the sword, but upon gazing at the ruined castle, he realized its owner had long been dead. Without hesitation, he stored the sword in his defective backpack and retrieved a small shovel, beginning to tend to the land around them. He was filling a bucket with soil to purify it, when one of the Pterodrones suggested they craft a scroll using ink. Jia responded that there was no rune suitable for purification. At that moment, a rune suddenly appeared on the tree. Coincidence? Or perhaps fate? If that was the case, he decided to inscribe the rune of purification, aiming to restore the land to its original state. Biam jumped onto him, playing happily while the Pterodrone used the scroll, a purification scroll capable of cleansing corrupted earth. Suddenly, all the Pterodrones vanished. The scene shifted dramatically to an entirely different location. A voice declared, "This is our land. Death to anyone who threatens our peace." The inhabitants there covered their ears, bewildered by the sudden sound. Out of nowhere, a star shimmered in the sky, and the Lich appeared with his army, proclaiming, "This land now belongs to us." However, another portal beside the Lich opened, from which emerged a massive figure. The Lich's gaze sharpened with fury. The Pterodrone crushed most of the enemies beneath its feet. The Lich attempted to counterattack using magic, but having evolved, he was now far more resilient. Nonetheless, he stood no chance, and he was swiftly and completely pulverized. The scene shifted back to Jia's tent. Sun Joan rushed in, grabbing the remote control and turning on the television. He shouted excitedly. The news broadcast a report about the battle against the Lich. The land, once purple and tainted, was suddenly cleansed. Officials declared that this meant the Lich had been defeated. Jay wondered what was happening. On the screen, the Pterodrone was seen flying through the sky. Everyone was confused about how such a catastrophe had disappeared so abruptly. Back in the shop, Jia wondered why the Pterodrone had been there. Jun Suk, a comrade from the company, recognized that it hadn't been a disaster on the level of destruction. His colleague confirmed that they had faced mythical monsters. All were bewildered, unable to comprehend what had transpired. Jia returned to the World Tree Realm, speaking urgently, seeking answers. The young adventurer stood quietly, contemplating the recent events surrounding the mysterious island of Yuri. His companions seemed visibly embarrassed, yet he sensed they were hiding something. Jia gently asked, "Did you use the ancient scroll and appear on Yuri's island?" The creatures remained silent, avoiding eye contact, and instead scampered away, dragging behind them a trail of gathered rewards. Jia pressed further. "Are you trying to silence me with these actions? I just want to know if you appeared there willingly." The creatures stayed mute, refusing to answer. Seeing their reluctance, Jia reached out and gently stroked them, not scolding but seeking reassurance. "I'm not angry," he murmured. "I only want to confirm it was you who made those appearances." After a moment, he nodded with quiet approval. "You've done well," he said, placing down 10 ethereal shards and 10 essence crystals. Jia often thought this was too generous, especially considering one enormous relic, the ancient Lich's statue, was worth millions of dollars. Behind him, Ditras, his trusted companion, began nibbling on an odd object, prompting Jia to joke, "Would you like to play with this?" Ditra snatched it eagerly. The large creature started devouring the relic, understanding instantly that it was a vital energy source. The creature seemed elated, as if it had grasped its purpose. Such beings, born from divine origins, remained a mystery to most. Meanwhile, Jia, now possessing 15 essence crystals, concluded it was time to enhance his stats. He focused on increasing his strength by 9 points and his resilience by 8, aiming to become a better fighter. He wondered inwardly, am I stronger now? Although uncertain, his goal was clear. Boosting his power would make farming and exploration easier. He was not obsessed with becoming invincible. He simply wanted to be more effective. Returning to his shop, Jia received an invitation to delve into a dungeon. Surprisingly, most of it had already been cleared out. The remaining loot was being gathered by a team of hunters. A strange crowd had assembled around the site, suggesting the dungeon's size was immense. As they worked, a man named Senior Wangu approached Jia, commenting, I've never seen such a large group for item collection. The dungeon must be enormous. Maybe we'll find something truly valuable. Jia nodded, skeptical. Probably not, he replied, since most of the good items are already taken. Senior Wangu chuckled. Sometimes, hunters get lazy and leave behind treasures. Just then, a dignified figure entered. They'd call her a noble lady, clad in shining armor, yet her gaze was fixed elsewhere. She approached Jia directly and asked, You're here for item collection, correct? He confirmed, explaining, I got a call needing assistance around here. Curious, everyone wondered. Who is she? Why is she talking to him? Meanwhile, Jijin was concerned. She worried the situation could turn dangerous. Elegantly, she offered her protection. Stay close to me, and you'll be safer and find it easier to handle everything. Jia grew slightly confused as many onlookers began to surround Jijin. Come with me, she beckoned. Let's go inside. She explained that large dungeons often contained rare plants, and Jia responded happily, I'm glad I can recognize good specimens. Most people don't even know what to gather at this point. The group moved inward, ready to explore the depths, seeking not only treasures but also unique flora that could be invaluable for their journey ahead. Inside her backpack, a small creature trembled anxiously. When she opened it, she was surprised to find it peacefully sleeping, appearing harmless and adorable. She gently reached out to caress it, but the creature swiftly bit her hand, prompting her to retreat slightly. She explained that it didn't like being touched when carried, which seemed to mildly frustrate her. Still, they continued their journey through the forest. As they walked, she noticed that the tiny creature seemed to grow larger with each passing day, leading her to wonder if it was eating well. She confirmed that it was, though she kept silent about having fed it strange stones valued at nearly $1 billion during their trek. She then asked if her companion had seen recent news about a mysterious creature, an enigma called Pterodrone, and about a nest of demonic ants, which reportedly bore a giant handprint the size of a house. She remembered having slapped someone, but couldn't believe such stories. Yet, doubt crept in about whether the world within the forest was truly separate from the outside, or perhaps a miniature reflection of it. Suddenly, Biam took a defensive stance, prepared to attack, while Een advised him to step back. From the shadows emerged numerous trees and plants with enormous mouths, threatening all around. Jia asked if Een was all right, but she responded that the place was where the individual they sought had appeared. The scene became clearer when they learned that the missing person was the top-ranking figure in Korea, indicating these monsters must be at least level 5 in strength. Een consumed one of Jia's potions, and Jia suggested she leave the dungeon immediately, explaining that she would try to hold them off. Jia knew it was impossible to stop all of them. These were extremely high-level monsters, but she noticed Biam beginning to emanate a strange aura, charging forward fiercely. Remarkably, the monsters fled from him, as if afraid. Biam grabbed a hand, bit into it, and tore away a piece. The fleeing plants seemed to retreat for their own safety. Een, utterly bewildered, did not understand what was happening. Meanwhile, Diem calmly returned with something in his mouth. Jia asked what it was, and he nodded for her to take it. At that moment, Jae-jin contemplated the giant trap that had killed the top figure. He'd never seen anything like it before. Jia pointed out that there was another problem. In one direction of the forest, everything was shrouded in purple mist. Ian told Jia that she should go back, but Jia insisted she had finally found a trail, and retreat was impossible now. Jia drew her position and decided they would go together, even if it was dangerous. She promised to protect them, and they agreed, trusting her. In the depths of the forest, she indicated a cave and asked whether she saw the light emanating from it. Jia nodded in agreement, and they decided to enter. Inside, bloodstains and large handprints suggested someone had fled desperately but had not succeeded. Suddenly, Jae-jin recognized the armor and sword of the top figure's remnants, though everything was torn and soaked with blood. She embraced the fallen figure, crying, convinced he had perished. Jia tried to comfort her, suggesting that if he had truly been killed here, his skeleton would remain. She thought that perhaps he had dropped his belongings and moved elsewhere. The faint hope lingered as their confusion grew, even as the danger pressed on. A giant green apple was clenched between his teeth, but in reality, it was a symbolic egg. He had heard of such things before, but he wasn't entirely sure what purpose it served. Once it hatched, he promised to examine it more closely. Suddenly, Biam bit into his arm, seeking a bit of affection. Jia commented that such gestures were promising signs, often indicating that someone was still alive. He agreed, convinced they should head back soon. They remained optimistic, yet if he found a battered, blood-stained suit of armor, his thoughts would inevitably lean toward the worst. Ian smiled gently, remarking that such a find brought great luck, which made Jia feel somewhat shy. The situation was unusual, truly peculiar. She told him to call if he ever needed assistance, and he nodded in response. Diem suddenly attempted to swipe at her, but she merely embraced him and stroked his back comfortingly. Inside the shop, Hai was examining the symbolic egg, but after searching through numerous books, he found no information that could shed light on it. Deciding to explore beyond the shop, he headed into the forest realm, hoping to uncover clues there. Upon arrival, the forest guardians approached, offering their help. Jia handed over the egg, which the creatures carefully took to their queen. She gently stroked it as well, and after a brief moment, a giant moth appeared. Recognizing it as a symbiont, Jia watched as the moth fluttered its wings, releasing a cloud of dust. Suddenly, a message appeared. A group of dormant symbionts had awakened. This marked the beginning of the restoration of the world tree. Jaya's eyes lit up with excitement as he reached out and touched the tree. In response, the tree bestowed its blessing upon him. The long-dormant destiny had been awakened, transforming his class into that of a world tree worker. The surroundings expanded dramatically. The landscape grew lush and vibrant, and from nowhere, a new lake appeared. The fruits, like the sun apple, increased in level, now capable of producing more potent potions. He thought that with this upgrade, he could craft more and earn greater wealth. However, a lingering thought surfaced. Perhaps restoring the world tree was the true purpose behind all this. Ain approached, analyzing him with curiosity. He asked if Jia was hungry. Then, pulling out his fishing rod, he suggested they catch something for dinner. He baited his hook and pulled out a bright red trout. As Jia held the fish, he experienced a strange effect. If he ate it, it would activate level 1 extrasensory perception for the following 30 minutes, increasing his reflexes by 20%. Suddenly, he noticed that all his items now had more detailed descriptions. This would make potion sales far easier. Without realizing it, he sprinted back to the store, where a crowd had gathered outside. Diem was handing out numbered tickets for entry. Someone asked what was happening. Everyone had come to buy potions from this shop, he explained. The potions crafted here were far superior to those from other regions, and people traveled from distant places just to buy them. The store was bustling. Jia realized that perhaps this was the best way he could help the most people, by limiting purchases to 3 potions per customer, ensuring everyone had access. On a quiet afternoon, a woman with a deep love for books entered a quaint shop and eagerly showed her friends something on her phone. The website of a renowned treasure hunter was filled with rare items. Feeling a touch of embarrassment, Her friend reached out and picked up a potion displayed nearby, exclaiming, "Wow! This is the first time I've seen something so intricately crafted." No one truly knew what purpose each potion served, but she pretended to ask questions just to gather more information, until she herself discovered the truth. She speculated that if the written effects were accurate, this potion would surpass all others she had seen before, perhaps even worth an extra one as a gift for her friend. Her friend declined but offered her a scroll of creation, a magical parchment capable of granting any small wish, with 2 uses. She warned her to be cautious, as she had yet to witness anyone use it without unforeseen consequences, but it was tempting nonetheless. Later that day, her friend ventured into a dungeon with companions. In the chaos of battle, a creature struck her from behind, knocking her to the ground. Her team quickly defeated the beast, and she was helped to her feet, strangely unharmed. The scroll had activated on its own, granting a buff that increased her item drop rate by 70% for 30 minutes. However, energy from the earth cracked beneath their feet, triggering panic among everyone, fearing imminent disaster. Instead of death, they found themselves transported directly into a treasure chamber of the dungeon, where she discovered an ancient book she had long sought. Once they gathered their possessions, they prepared to leave, but suddenly, a multitude of monsters appeared, attacking relentlessly. Attempting to escape proved futile, as the monster's pursuit was relentless. She instinctively placed the book on her head and silently prayed for protection. Miraculously, they were transported to a vast desert, where everything they knew had vanished. Meanwhile, back at the shop, Gia watched as the creatures chasing her friends reappeared in her homeland. When they returned, the teleported individuals gathered at her door in anger. Gia welcomed them in, listening intently to their story, and she revealed the mysterious book she had found. Inside, they discovered a map of the continent of Heen, with detailed annotations of terrain, names of locations, and creatures inhabiting each area. After they departed, the young girl sat quietly, contemplating her next steps. There were many responsibilities awaiting her: caring for the shop, studying the strange book, and managing everything else. As she caressed her sleepy kitten and settled into her chair, she remembered the numerous potions she needed to prepare before heading into her garden. She thought it would be wise to examine the map first. Since it was a map used by the Knights of the Empire, the quality was exceptional, with every detail meticulously recorded: territories, landmark names, and monsters. The ancient lich that had appeared from the south and the forest beast Elgin had encountered from Mount Apito were all marked clearly. If the map were complete, she could identify the locations of every dungeon she knew of. An inspired idea suddenly struck her. She decided to ask the elders if they knew anything about the map's origins. Meanwhile, she recalled that she kept some medicine in her drawer, used to quickly knock herself out whenever sleep eluded her. She took a dose to rest, feeling her consciousness drift, yet her curiosity about the whereabouts of the Terrones and the little flower that alertly resembled a guardian lingered in her mind. A sense of tension filled the air as creatures trembled, signaling the emergence of an immensely powerful monster. Our protagonist watched eagerly, curiosity piqued by the sight before him. The scene unfolded with a massive one-eyed cyclops, a colossal being whose size made everything around it seem insignificant. For our young hero, this creature was nothing more than a small anomaly, a rare spectacle rarely seen beyond the borders of China, where almost nothing was known about it except for its formidable size and intimidating appearance. What remained in memory was that dozens of hunters had been dispatched solely to capture this beast. Yet, in Korea, such a creature had never been encountered before. The beast trembled uncontrollably, struggling to land blows on the smaller creatures called pterodrone. The protagonist turned to Biam and asked whether he wasn't going to help, but the response was firm: no, he wouldn't. Biam explained that assistance wasn't needed, which struck the young observer as odd. No mission notification appeared on his interface, hinting that the pterodrone were capable of handling themselves. The small protectors showed bravery and resilience, forming a tight formation around a leader. Our hero's curiosity deepened. What was their plan? The creatures carried a large, shimmering crystal, which they sliced into pieces with precision. The protagonist wondered what their strategy might be. In silence, the smaller beings formed shields from sturdy stones, ready for the confrontation. Meanwhile, the Cyclops grew more agitated, redirecting its focus to its immense eye. It unleashed another potent laser beam, prompting our hero to warn of its danger. The laser sliced through the forest, leaving destruction in its wake. The disparity in strength between the Cyclops and the Pterodrone became painfully clear. Such power was overwhelming. At this rate, the small creatures risked being crushed like discarded debris. But then, the tiny defenders regrouped around their captain and devised a plan. The protagonist observed as they brought out an enormous crystal, carving it into tools or shields. He wondered what they intended to do. All the small beings formed shields from stones fortified with a special material called ear, a substance vital for their defense. The Cyclops, seemingly unfazed, refocused its gaze and let loose another devastating laser. Our hero saw the villains making no effort to dodge, instead remaining calmly stationed. A smile crept across his face as the laser struck one of the shields, reflecting and bouncing toward the Cyclops' arm. The monster was knocked down, left an amputated stump, wounded and disoriented. Taking the opportunity, the protagonist scribbled notes into his journal, recalling that facing such a creature required using an ear shield to deflect its lasers. He questioned whether people had enough ear to implement this tactic effectively. The battered Cyclops sobbed in defeat, retreating with frantic movements. But the battle was over. Pterodrone had triumphed. Then, with a powerful blow to its calf, the beast stumbled and fell, much like a clumsy fool. The small creatures, proud and victorious, approached our hero, who stepped forward to praise their valiant efforts. He reached out, offering gentle affection and admiration. They had worked tirelessly, and he decided to reward them generously with a sizable amount of ear, an essential resource in their battles. He handed all the collected ear to the delighted Pterodrone, who eagerly received it. In return, our protagonist obtained a small, mysterious scroll, an essence, bringing his total to 10, plus additional essences, reaching a grand total of 325. Puzzled, he wondered why he had received such a substantial reward. When checking his guild interface, he noticed an update to the information on the wiki. Clicking to view the new data, he discovered an entry. To defeat a Cyclops, you need 10 ear shields. The information displayed revealed the type of system at play, something entirely unfamiliar to him. He had never encountered anything like this before, yet it didn't seem to matter. 10 essences could be obtained effortlessly, with just a few dungeon runs. The screen provided details about a mace, including its ocular attack and laser displacement. He scrolled down to uncover the most vital part, another 10 essences. This was cruel. Capitalism's ruthless grip was undeniable. His mind raced, pondering the unfairness while the young girl nearby clumsily hit her own forehead in frustration. Why were only 10 essences required? Who was the mastermind behind this? If caught, he'd make them pay dearly. A faint sense of unease crept over him. Someone was scheming to do him harm. From a nearby car, a man exited and questioned a stranger, asking if he needed anything. The stranger simply replied no. Yet why were so many hunters gathered here? It seemed connected to last night's events. The man mentioned a plan, a strategy to defeat a Cyclops which required 10 essences to view, and an ultimate strategy that also demanded another 10. Each hunter understood that spending 20 essences just to see how to defeat such a beast was a hefty investment, prompting them all to converge here. The creator of this system remained a mystery, but his writing was remarkable. Especially intriguing was the fact that no Cyclops dungeon had ever appeared in this region before. How could he possess such information? June shook agreed. A level 6 creature like a Cyclops shouldn't be easily defeated without some secret knowledge. The man confirmed this, but rumors hinted at a powerful artifact, an item called BFF, hidden within a dungeon currently marked on the map, with 4 Cyclops nearby. They called in the intelligence and operations team for a meeting. The man explained that accessing the wiki from other countries was impossible, ruling out foreign interference. Jun Shook asked if it was possible to trace who had received the essences, but the response was disappointing. The essences didn't go directly into the system that managed Hunter's data, but instead, they followed some mysterious process, aligning precisely with the theory that those who read the strategy received a buff. Jun Shook, puzzled, developed a headache. What was happening? He instructed everyone to monitor hunters accepting this mission, to keep an eye on developments as their safety was paramount. Meanwhile, a team was assembled to hunt the Cyclops, with Yun joining the effort. She would strike first, while Yun would finish the job. Yun agreed, especially since he possessed a 15% attack buff against Cyclops, along with 15% increased critical damage. His plan was to set the creature ablaze. The scene shifted to the Cyclops unleashing a massive laser beam. The knight defended himself, reflecting the attack, while Ian struck its thighs and calves. Suddenly, a meteorite struck the Cyclops' chest, creating chaos around them. In the shop, their young hero watched everything unfold. An announcement declared the Cyclops dungeon had been defeated with ease and no casualties. The protagonist was genuinely impressed, praising Ian and Yun's remarkable skills. A reporter announced that this successful strategy would be shared with other countries at no cost. Meanwhile, Jia was now entirely confident. Everything documented in the Book of Infinite Magic was being directly uploaded to the Hunter's Wiki, ensuring widespread knowledge and strategic sharing. In the quiet depths of the ocean, an extraordinary event was unfolding. A young explorer was diligently sharing every detail of his adventures with his robotic drone. Suddenly, a small plant nearby started to shout or perhaps alert him to unseen danger. Without hesitation, a monstrous creature appeared, prompting a quick warning. This boy knew exactly where to find help. His emergency medical kit was stored precisely in a drawer for moments like this. As the creatures began to announce their presence, he often found himself drifting into sleep, unwary of the threats lurking nearby. Once he arrived at the scene, he found himself amid a vast sea, where a high-tech system alerted him to a dire situation. The alert signaled that the Devourer of Worlds, a colossal beast, was injured and needed urgent assistance. Shocked, the young man wondered aloud, "What is that?" The system pointed downward, revealing an enormous hole beneath the surface. As he looked closer, water splashed onto his face, startling him awake. He shook himself off and dried his legs, realizing he was standing over the very creature the system had identified. A giant whale-like entity, seemingly immense beyond comprehension, emerged from beneath the Earth's crust. He thought, "This can't be real. Such a beast must be so vast it defies belief. It might even encompass the entire planet." At that moment, understanding dawned on him. This was indeed the Devourer of Worlds. His surprise turned into curiosity, as he muttered, "So, you are the Devourer of Worlds, you rascal." The creature, sensing its weakness, appeared deflated, and the boy finally grasped why it had been gathering so much essence. Every bit of energy was needed to heal itself. With a gentle gesture, he offered a portion of his collected essence, feeding the beast. The creature, feeling somewhat irritated, cast a fleeting glare at him but did not attack. Curious about the creature's condition, the boy began to shout, and suddenly, a flash of light erupted in the middle of the sea. The beast transformed into a shining, white form, and both of them collapsed onto the deck, exhausted. A message appeared on his system, announcing, "Thanks to your help, the Devourer of Worlds has reverted to its original form." As the creature shrank down to a tiny size, he marveled. What a strange situation this was. When injured, it grew enormous. When healthy, it became minuscule. His admiration was genuine, and he reached out to hug the now adorable and tiny Devourer of Worlds. It swam happily, and the boy felt glad that he had used his essence for this moment. Yet, nearby, Biam, always seeking more for himself, looked covetously at the scene. Suddenly, the boy noticed something unusual, an abrupt movement that caused him to jump and splash water everywhere, startling the foolish onlookers. It turned out that the Devourer of Worlds had brought an impressive feast. A multitude of fish, oysters, snails, and crabs. The protagonist was astounded. "Are you giving me all this?" he asked in amazement. The creature nodded affirmatively, and he expressed his gratitude. Biam, meanwhile, eagerly began to eat. The Devourer of Worlds disappeared into the depths, sparking headlines and urgent news reports. A ridiculously gigantic creature had appeared off the southern coast of Korea. Speculations arose. Was it the same as Harry Potter's squad examining the scene? No, it was not the Devourer of Worlds, but a massive octopus. Many thought it might be the beloved beast, but suddenly, it leapt onto a nearby home, creating chaos. People fled in terror, but the real danger was still lurking. Just then, someone pointed upwards and shouted, "Captain, look at that!" They saw what had appeared behind the unfortunate octopus. The children were terrified, realizing that a creature of destructive power was nearby. The octopus struggled to return to the ocean, but it was swiftly absorbed and dragged into the belly of the Devourer of Worlds. With a final tremor, the enormous whale-like creature disappeared beneath the waves. The children stood rooted in awe, silent witnesses to this incredible spectacle. In this moment, the enormous whale appears as a demigod, bound by a pact forged with someone who awakened for the very first time. The figure confirms that the description matches that of a demigod. Junsu suggests that further observation is necessary, but all present agree that creatures near Korea had been driven into Japan. The entire situation remains chaotic, and no one understands what is unfolding. Within the library, Shounen is deeply engaged, reading through a collection of ancient texts from the Kingdom of Stran, seeking any clues. The young hero expresses his gratitude for her effort. She inquires whether he managed to utilize the map, to which he replies, regrettably, that it only covers territory from the kingdom's origin up to the river region. Moreover, the map's information was partially provided by some knights under commander's orders, rendering it somewhat imprecise. She looks puzzled and asks what he means by not perfect, implying doubts about its accuracy. He explains that only by adding the southern coastal area will the map of the Stran realm be complete and accurate, revealing everything around their region. Sunen's curiosity grows. She questions why he's so invested in restoring the map, considering it seems more like a passion than a mere hobby. He confesses that he feels it will assist someone. Confidently, he believes that the miner they seek, ANSU, is alive somewhere on the Jerinan continent. His unwavering faith stems from the discovery of the hero's armor and sword, both completely destroyed, which indicates that ANSU is still alive. The young hero is convinced that, with the influence of the World Tree, he will find him. Sunen, intrigued, asks if he's trying to help a close friend. He denies it but remains silent, leaving her curious. She mentions that she's going to sleep early because she has to wake up at dawn, and he responds kindly, "All right, farewell, my warrior." Before she departs, he reminds her to pick up the potion in the morning, as they are conducting the third dance. She agrees and thanks him before leaving. His heart is filled with satisfaction, knowing that her visit helped him gather more information. Meanwhile, the hero creates a new magical scroll within his book, the Scroll of Pursuit, which allows him to track a living individual through their recent whereabouts. He is pondering about Een, who is tearful and distressed. He wishes to assist the warrior. Using his spatial power and a beam of light, he observes her pacing back and forth. He wonders why he didn't use this ability on the target he seeks, calling himself a fool, yet reminds himself that he can summon endless spells. Biam approaches, casting a glance at him before gesturing with a question. Was he afraid? Biam gently caresses his shoulder, and together they drift back into the world of dreams. Strangely, the water there has become much clearer. He wonders if everything is thanks to the Devourer of Worlds. Even the solar apples. They have all been elevated in level. Later, he visits the band of the Pterodrone, noting that the boss is growing larger. No, just the angle was deceiving. The hero apologizes for his delay, explaining that he had been busy reading the rogue's documents. With pride, he then presents a new item, an enchanted scroll that allows him to locate living beings and activates it. Within a lush garden teeming with life's bounty, our protagonist gazes in awe at a heap of vibrant fruit seeds. The abundance has grown exponentially compared to days past, and he feels a surge of gratitude. The leader gestures upwards, prompting him to ascend, and curiosity propels him to begin climbing. When he reaches the summit, a panoramic view unfolds before his eyes. Recognizing a distant mountain, likely Mount Apido, his heart affirms that the entire continent of Gen is enclosed within this enchanted garden. At that moment, Bion looks downward with irritation, eager to descend for a meal, yet finds himself trapped. Climbing up is straightforward. Returning is a challenge. As he starts to descend, a sudden grip clamps onto his arm, tightening painfully, and he notices a small plant staring back at him. Startled, both he and the plant freeze in mutual surprise. The plant then calls out for help, pleading to be saved. The plant, it turns out, is mischievous but not malicious. It had merely created a pathway for him. Calming the little troublemaker, our hero observes that the plant is harmless and quite endearing, with a penchant for clinging to passing humans. This detail sparks a thought. Perhaps it's worth noting in the Hunter's Wiki, he muses. Considering the long trek ahead, he knows he must cross the entire plain to reach Mount Apido. He remembers that this is the direction where people from the Strand Kingdom fled, based on information from a Pterodrone. It might also be where Ikon Seyuk vanished. The map indicates that following the river Tals could bring him closer to Mount Apido, and heading south of the mountain might be a good strategy to track Seyuk's trail. However, upon moving south, he encounters a barrier that blocks his way, an obstacle he cannot pass alone. He promptly calls for assistance from a Pterodrone while they investigate. Meanwhile, he decides to feed Bion. Yet, the whereabouts of Bion remain uncertain. He's calling out, but Bion is nowhere nearby. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps draws his attention. Looking around, he spots the crazed, carnivorous plant approaching. An unusual interaction, and a sign that something is amiss. Now, the young explorer is worried. He wonders where Bion has gone. He bangs his head against a table in the tent, distressed. Bion, where did you disappear to without me? He laments, regret in his voice. Meanwhile, Een and Unseek enter the tent. She asks what happened, and Judja responds anxiously. The question arises, who is this unfamiliar individual beside him? She had thought our hero knew him, but now she's curious about the stranger's identity. The stranger introduces himself, but continues speaking as if unannounced. He pulls out a potion, claiming that what he has is extraordinary. Our protagonist thanks him, recognizing that the potion bears the name Sarate. It seems Judja called him first, which surprised her. The stranger then reveals that he has something important to discuss. He mentions studying an ancient book and discovering an artifact that might be of interest. She looks at an old scroll etched with strange symbols, perhaps a trace map. The protagonist suggests this artifact could help locate Son Yuk, noting the association with someone named Yunsu, spelled with an H, similar to Hyen. The person she seeks, Son Yuk, is spelled with an S, though their names sound alike. Judja interrupts, reminding everyone to keep this information secret. Junshuk then asks whether Lord Jia has made a contract with anyone, hinting at deeper alliances or plans yet to unfold. Our divine creature, the protagonist, silently reflects on the existence of demigods. The individual he speaks with confirms, yes, he is a demigod. The man asks if he should reveal his abilities and how he employs them, but the protagonist dismisses the request, recognizing that such details are not his concern. Instead, he is informed that his recent actions have significantly elevated his standing in South Korea, making him an influential figure. The man then explains that thanks to the potions he has crafted, the survival rate among hunters has increased by a full 20%. The hunting guild, in turn, owes him a debt, prompting him to visit with a special gift. He assures that if the protagonist requires assistance, support will be readily available. Feeling somewhat uncomfortable, the protagonist internally questions whether he truly deserves this recognition. The man confirms that he does, emphasizing that the protagonist represents the future of hunters. Suddenly, Ian interrupts, recalling that the man had intended to speak with the protagonist personally. The man responds, affirming that their private conversation is ongoing. Jajin, suddenly apologetic, admits he was unaware Yoon would come here for such business, calling him a maniac. The young man reassures him that everything is fine, expressing appreciation and promising to prepare a better meal next time. The man, grateful, departs with a multitude of potions in hand. Ian comments that this individual seems to prefer working alone. The protagonist finds this somewhat endearing. Their conversation shifts when a woman sits beside him, asking what he is composing. He replies that he is just finishing a drawing, depicting a castle alongside a lake. She inquires whether it is the castle from the Kingdom of Stran. He confirms this, explaining that if the terrain resembles what is shown in the sketch, he can use a special scroll to determine if Yuk is nearby or leaves any trace. He proceeds to demonstrate how the scroll functions but finds that his ink is nearly exhausted. She tearfully thanks him, expressing deep gratitude. He responds kindly, saying he believes Yuk is alive somewhere, and he will do his best to assist her. She praises him as a very kind person, to which he modestly replies that friends should always help one another. As she approaches to offer help, he thinks she may be getting too close. She then asks where Biam is, concerned about his whereabouts. He responds that Biam escaped into the forest, noting that the creature is leaping and transforming into a giant, despite its weakened state, being repeatedly destroyed by hundreds or thousands of guardians. It appears that Biam is hunting someone. Soon, they discover a small wolf caught in chains by a goblin, bearing the essence of the god of Brawler. The wolf, representing the will of the deity, is clearly suffering, surrounded by 200 goblin. Watching the scene unfold with bared teeth, they suddenly hear a sound behind them. Turning around, they see a colossal Biam walking calmly among the others, unbothered. He sends a message to Tumen, warning that all those enslaved by evil are doomed. The goblins scatter in fear. Biam then approaches the small wolf, which looks up at him and taunts. "What are you doing here, coward?" It seems the creature has two names, Arctis and Bion. Bion shatters his chains and declares, "Your torment ends here, Brawler." Gruler, an arrogant cat, responds dismissively, but Biam explains that he is involved in restoring the Tree of the World, hinting at a greater purpose beyond the immediate conflict. Deep beneath a vast, forsaken fortress, Enzato Greyer often found himself alone, driven solely by faith and the guidance of divine will. His hardened gaze fixed ahead as a foul, rotten cat suddenly appeared, biting into his neck with relentless ferocity. The beast's growl echoed through the silent ruins, prompting a sharp question from Sunan, who called out to him, "What are you doing, you bastard?" Biam, unfazed, responded with calm authority, "Remember, I am the divine agent. If I say you leave, then you depart. No questions asked." With that, they moved on, their footsteps echoing against ancient stones as their group gathered before an ominous castle. It was reminiscent of the drawing they'd encountered earlier while searching for the portal to another realm. Sunan expressed his gratitude. "Thanks for accompanying me. Compared to the potions you provided, this feels worthwhile. But I wonder, why did you want us to come here?" The rest of the group nodded in agreement, questioning the purpose of this seemingly abandoned dungeon. The commander of the Black Lion offered an explanation. "During the war, our protagonist aided some survivors in escaping captivity. Perhaps there's a secret passage nearby," he suggested. Sunjong, listening intently, replied, "Oh, I hadn't considered that possibility. Maybe there's something hidden here." A knight with Mo armor echoed, "I don't care about the fallen kingdom. I just hope there's a powerful artifact inside." His eyes rested on the sword he carried, an elegant, long knight's blade. Such a weapon not only boasted impressive stats but also increased the entire group's damage output by a modest 7% for 5 minutes. Our protagonist looked at the sword and nodded. "This sword is quite good," he said, inspecting it carefully. The knight raised an eyebrow. "See? This is just a normal artifact. At least it has some group BFF effect, he added, referencing the boosting enchantment. The protagonist mused internally. I know this is a rare artifact. The knight, noticing his silence, questioned, How do you know that? The young man thought briefly and then realized, *O, blank, I forgot only I can see these details. Recently, he had gained a new skill, object analysis, which allowed him to identify rare items effortlessly. Everyone was impressed. Wow, they exclaimed. Now we understand why you describe potions so accurately. The armed warrior asked, Hey, what about my armor? Do you think it's good? The protagonist examined it, a light chest armor increasing defense by 10% and critical defense by 5. He nodded approvingly before thanking everyone. The knights cheered excitedly. Their new abilities felt like a step toward riches. We're going to get rich, they proclaimed, only to be silenced by a few shoves to the head. How dare you even think of using the boy? Some members apologized, and Sunjong remarked, It's good you've gained new skills, but be cautious. Creatures like bloodsuckers are everywhere. Everyone laughed, understanding that danger lurked around every corner. The group continued their patrol along the crumbling wall, and the protagonist considered consulting Jun Suk later on, how best to utilize his newfound abilities. Suddenly, a knight pointed to a section of the wall ripped apart by monsters. Beyond it stretched a river, massive and unnaturally clear, flowing with a silent, powerful current. He paused nearby, pondering the scene. This place looks deep. How did they tunnel through here? We need to check the back of Mount Apito. He wondered if they should revisit the map or wait for others to arrive. Meanwhile, Sunjong's backpack activated its Hope Scroll, which increased the chances of discovering rare items by an astonishing 70%. Suddenly, our young hero leaps up, startling everyone nearby. She appears momentarily bewildered, but he springs into action because he sees her slipping into the water like a fool. Once again, he dives heroically into the depths, swimming with the skill of a champion to save her. However, a strange presence is on his back. Recognizing the figure, he realizes it's the Devourer of Worlds, though surprisingly tiny. With a mischievous grin, the creature has rescued both of them. Outside, it encourages him to wake up, remarking that he's being reckless, fully soaked and shivering. A short while later, they find themselves back on solid ground. He expresses gratitude to the Devourer of Worlds for their salvation. From afar, Suyun calls him over, pointing out an unusual magical circle with a small cauldron inscribed within it. The protagonist is filled with wonder, appreciating the significance of this discovery. The Devourer of Worlds is thanked again before saying farewell. Suyun, observing the scene, wonders inwardly about her own situation, unsure whether she is falling continuously without knowing it. The little knight comments that at least he's managed to obtain that brooch, which looks to be of high quality. In his hand, he holds the last brooch crafted by the artisan. She asks whether it possesses any special function, and he examines it carefully. It's an artifact designed to improve manual techniques by 10%. She's genuinely amazed and tears a few pages from a book, then folds an origami dragon. He remarks that the artifact could be perfect for her, adding that it would also be ideal for crafting potions. However, he questions whether it shares the same power. The knight urges returning to the dungeon, which is about to close. He thanks him and promises to meet again tomorrow. Surprisingly, the inscriptions on the ground reveal instructions on creating a dimensional portal, constructed using the divine powers granted to them. With this, one can open a gateway to another dimension and return by drawing the same circle. Our hero feels hopeful. I've found a magical circle, and luck is on my side. If I can uncover its secrets, perhaps I can learn how the Terradrone can travel so effortlessly between the garden and the real world. He heads back to his shop, announcing, I'm back. But then he recalls that the rogue isn't there. Still, he remains as confident as ever, an unwavering, if somewhat psychopathic, believer in everything. He's sure the rogue will return soon. Thinking of work, he heads to the garden and calls for the children, but they're nowhere to be seen. After scanning the surroundings, he notices someone approaching from the side. A gigantic diem holding a small wolf in its mouth. He asks, "When did you grow so much, and who's this street dog in your hand?" Gazing more closely, he recognizes Greyer, the messenger of the gods. The creature appears to ask for help, and the protagonist is prompted to decide, do you want to take care of the boy? Yes or no? He nods, and the creature begins to glow with a golden light. The power of the world tree flows into Greyer, revitalizing its strength. It growls fiercely at him but is too small to pose a real threat. The boy gently holds the tiny creature, calling it Dogo, comparing it to a little puppy. Dogo is a true marvel of creativity, and although he doesn't like the name, Biam insists, "Just accept it, my friend. This is your new home." Since Dogo's arrival, the number of pterodrones has increased noticeably. This likely results from Dogo's semi-divine nature and the influence of its master. It also boosts animal affinity and leadership by a single point. In addition, his speed increases by a factor of 1.2, which Jaya considers highly beneficial. This indicates that simply by strengthening the growler, everyone else also becomes stronger without any additional effort. Moreover, he retains the ability of Persistent Hunter, allowing him to detect any movement within a radius of 2 kilometers. With Dogo leading the way, they can swiftly reach Mount Aparo. The harvest is yielding a vast mountain of ether, thanks to the children who gather a unique fruit intended as a gift. Eager to taste it, he feels joy but is quickly robbed by a greedy Bon. A fight erupts, and their young companion must intervene, urging, "Hey, you two little rascals, stop fighting." At that moment, a tiny plant sends a warning, sensing someone inside the shop, quickly reverts to its position, setting both boys on the ground and telling them they're overweight from all the eating. Just then, members of the guild arrive to enter the store. Dogo remains cautious and somewhat hostile, distrust flashing in his eyes. One of them comments, "Well, you've caught another scoundrel." Jun Suk greets the main character, saying he didn't expect to be invited so soon, which makes him feel a bit embarrassed. To his surprise, Jun Suk gets straight to the point, asking if he can see the properties of artifacts. Our protagonist confirms, explaining that even the guild leader, whom he previously declined, also asks about him. The leader appears and speaks, "Hello, Mr. Jia. It's been some time." The protagonist responds, "Yes, it has passed. What brings you here, Hunter Choi?" The man replies, "I know you turned down guild offers last time, and I remember how angry they were, but I am here for a different reason. The potions and scrolls you've been creating are remarkable, and as an alchemist, I can't help but feel a bit envious." Slightly embarrassed, our protagonist thanks him. Jun Suk suggests they sit and talk as they have many questions. After a moment, he asks, "Up to what level can you see artifacts?" The protagonist explains, "I can see their names, descriptions, unique abilities, and even percentages. I discovered this while making potions and artifacts." Both are impressed by such skill, practically as if he belonged to a specialized analysis class. The protagonist, modest, admits he has the ability but isn't entirely sure how to use it effectively. Jun Suk assures him they will teach him, and Hunter Choi is present for the same purpose. Our protagonist feels grateful, saying he'll assist hunters as much as he can with his skills. Jun Suk continues, "First, you should know that only a few evaluators exist worldwide. If your ability were to become known, hunters from all around would come to your shop, disrupting your daily life. But we've already prepared for that." Our protagonist asks, "Already?" Jun Suk responds, "Yes, there's a new entry on the Hunter Wiki called Artifact Appraisal Information, posted yesterday, between 10 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. It details an easy process, so stay tuned. In the bustling underground chambers of the guild, those who arrive early enjoy priority in service, with a maximum of 6 dozen reservations accepted each day. The location is discreet, nestled within the basement, where the same name echoes Guan's eternal call. Guan is bewildered, puzzled by the situation unfolding before her. How could this be my guild? What is happening here? I know nothing of this. Soon, a line begins to form, growing longer with each passing moment. Our protagonist, wearing a mask to conceal his identity, makes his way through the crowd. He discreetly sends artifact analyses to everyone around him. If he uses this sword, akin to the other called the Witch of the East, every 30 seconds, he gains a chance to speed up his movements. A girl approaches, expressing her gratitude. "Thank you very much, Master Cat," she says politely. The feline master, Guan, also offers thanks, remarking that analyzing artifacts is quite enjoyable. The only drawback, he remarks, is that wearing the mask can be somewhat bothersome, but the effort is worth it, especially after seeking help from Yunsu. Yunsu, meanwhile, feels a twinge of shame. He declined Guan's invitation to join her guild, yet here he is, using their facilities. Poor Guan slams her fist on the table in frustration. Choi attempts to calm her, saying, "Relax, my warrior. The worst part is that Guan is worried she might discover that I am Jia. Then things could get even worse." Guan knows nothing and is plainly upset, muttering, "I can't believe reservations are booked for the next 3 months. Choi responds sharply, "Miss, that's your fault for not being fast enough." Guan seizes him roughly, exclaiming, "How could you do this to me? You should have told me earlier." Choi explains, "It's not me in charge, it's Yunsu. There was no way to plan this in advance. The location was settled just yesterday. Besides, you told me I could use the basement for anything I needed." She glances at a pile of staves and mutters, "It'll take at least 2 years to analyze all this." She demands action. "Don't we have any privileges since they're using our space?" she asks sharply. Choi shrugs, "I don't know. I'm leaving now. I have a lot to do." He advises her, "Your time will come eventually. Just wait and avoid causing more trouble." Seated in irritation, Guan ponders who this Master Cat really is. Who is this man? If I find out, I'll make him my loyal asset, my slave evaluation. Her ears burn as she hears chatter about him nonstop. Our protagonist explains to Choi how to craft high-quality potions. "You need to stir it like this, friend." Then the potion transforms from special to very special. Choi looks on, amazed. "Wow, we did it the same way. But yours lasts 16 seconds, and mine only 11. What's going on?" The protagonist suggests it might be due to variations in ingredient quality. In truth, it's because he is already a level 3 alchemist, though no one knows this yet. Nevertheless, they have enough potions to sell tomorrow. He thanks Choi for his help, noting that with him their production speed has increased. Choi mentions that he and the president of the Hunters Guild want to recruit more alchemists. "Our good potions can't be sold only here. We need to expand and open more stores," he urges. He asks to learn more from his teacher. The young alchemist realizes he needs to capture this knowledge fully. Having recently started his journey as an alchemist, he feels eager. Later, as they depart, exhaustion hits him. He considers resting in the garden. When he arrives, the Terradrone workers are busy harvesting, creating towering heaps of earth and debris. In the bustling clearing, our young hero called out, inviting the children to gather around. With joyful leaps, they hurried toward him, their faces lit with excitement. Naturally, they began to debate amongst themselves, sharing their thoughts eagerly. A small, commanding figure, a tiny but fierce land-drone knight, approached and pointed decisively in a certain direction. Our protagonist wondered what challenge lay ahead. Guler, a lively companion, jumped and gesticulated wildly, gesturing for attention, prompting the small knight to follow. Soon, a crew of mosquitoes and wild dogs trailed behind them as they advanced. As they approached, an alert flashed on the system. Mysterious creatures had appeared in the Great Plains. The land drone displayed its formidable skills, demonstrating mastery over commands. An impressed "wow" escaped the protagonist's lips as he observed. Despite its impressive capabilities, the tiny drone could hardly compare in size to the larger threats. With a swift sweep of a single leg, all nearby enemies were swept away, flying off into the distance. The system announced triumphantly, The Landrone force had successfully eradicated all the hostile beings. In a remarkable display of evolution, the Landrones had gained new powers following a divine blessing granted by a semi-divine entity. From the heavens, a shimmering new breed descended, a luminous figure illuminating the sky. It reached the hand of our young explorer, signifying the expansion of their domain. Thanks to this achievement, the vast plains began to clear, unlocking a new territory called MYTHICAL. This was the method, eliminating creatures to gradually expand the explored area. The boy congratulated everyone for their efforts, especially praising Adobo, who seemed quite proud of himself. Clad in confidence, Adobo boasted about his skills, claiming he was too precious to get dirty. Suddenly, a fierce battle resumed. Our hero needed to mobilize his forces once again. Hastily, they headed towards Mount Apido, hoping to uncover clues. After traveling a long distance, they finally discovered a base used by the Knights of the Black Lion. Noticing that the base was situated in the south, it appeared to connect to a hidden passage, a tunnel carved into the mountain. As our hero attempted to pass through, a system message appeared. Intervention permitted due to the restoration of the World Tree. Physical interference with Genin has now been prohibited. It was explained that, due to divine influence, certain actions like creating ground spaces with a simple slap were no longer allowed. Now, our protagonist was bound by new rules. He understood that, as a divine envoy himself, his previous methods were restricted. His previous ability to manipulate terrain was now disabled. The system offered him a solution. A new skill, divine vision, granting the power to observe from a deity's perspective. Activating this skill, he found himself floating above the landscape, gazing down from the sky. The view was breathtaking, and he was immediately struck by its vastness. However, he swiftly realized something remarkable. His vision seemed to be all-encompassing, able to see everywhere simultaneously. From above, he observed an army of humans encircled by our elusive adversaries. Our hero wondered if these could be survivors from a fallen kingdom. The battle was fierce, with creatures falling in every direction. Amidst the chaos, he spotted a young blonde boy fiercely fighting off enemies. He thought with surprise, could this be the captain? As soon as the name Eddie was mentioned, a familiar figure, his doubts were confirmed. It was the soldier Ian had been searching for, Eddie. The captain was struggling to hold back the relentless assault. Eddie shouted, trying to rally his comrades. The young explorer recognized him immediately, understanding that this was the heart of their resistance. An inspiring figure fighting desperately for survival amid the chaos. Confused and uncertain, Nurez Juk expressed his bewilderment, unsure of how events had taken such a strange turn. A ruthless man mercilessly kicked an orc down a mountainside, grumbling about the lack of provisions. They could at least bring some food, he muttered. At this rate, we'll end up eating monsters. Edie reassured him calmly. Don't worry, we won't let you go hungry. Yuk responded sharply. I've told you many times that Pig Poro and the Baron are working together. They're stealing our supplies. With determination, he added, if you give me the go-ahead, I'll find where they're hiding everything. However, the prince rejected the proposal. No, thank you. Understanding the gravity of the situation, our protagonist recognized that Song Yuk was indeed the prince of the kingdom of Estran. With this knowledge, Yuk departed with his men, leaving the scene behind. Then a new mission emerged for the hero, to rebuild the shattered village of survivors. They had been defeated by undead forces but managed to escape, now hiding in Mount Apido. These survivors were fighting off countless monsters amid severe food shortages. The first task was to restore the territory of Estran by reinstating the rightful prince. The second involved locating the villains, those exploiting and abusing the villages. The villain Varon, Grami, Peroja, and Jaya were known to carry out such atrocities. The hero was struck by the level of detail in this mission. Ever before had he received a quest so richly described. It seemed to resemble some kind of story mode, but that was not important now. The only thing that mattered was finding Yuk. Yuk was the key piece in this puzzle. The hero knew he would be thrilled by this news and was eager to locate him. Yet he paused, shaking his head. First, I need to bring him back. I can't interfere physically in his world. How am I supposed to do that? Then a realization dawned. He could do it, but he couldn't do it alone. He called upon the pterodons for help. I'll need a favor, he said. You know what this magic circle is, right? The captain pointed in a specific direction. When they arrived, 2 circles glowed before them. The hero immediately understood the circles were used to activate some form of teleportation. He threw himself into the green circle, which began to shine brightly. He realized that the green marked the entrance, while the yellow was the exit. The pterodons jumped into the green circle and emerged from the yellow one. Wow, he exclaimed. It's truly a teleportation circle. Most likely, the survivors had used it instead of a tunnel. The exit was probably somewhere near Mount Apido. If he could find where it was, he could bring everyone back. He asked the pterodons, do you also use this magic circle to travel between the garden and the real world? They formed an X with their hands. Jaya inquired nervously. Then how come you can go so easily from the garden to Gina? The captain pointed to the world tree, explaining, the world tree serves as the bridge between both worlds. Still puzzled, the hero expressed gratitude for everyone's hard work and requested the captain to search around Mount Apido for any similar magic circles, asking to be notified if they found one. The scene shifted to the survivors' camp. The soldiers had gone out to gather supplies but had found only enough food for a week. Edie spoke with Pori, noting that the amount of food on the cart did not match the needs of the group. Once, long ago, in the ancient realm of Estran, a peaceful land within the continent of Gina, its inhabitants enjoyed prosperity and tranquility. But that serenity was shattered when a war erupted against monstrous forces. Survivors of that brutal conflict rallied behind Prince Cal, known also as Edie, seeking refuge from the undead horrors. In their desperate attempt to escape, they fortified themselves atop Mount Apido. Yet even there, life remained perilous. Constant attacks from ferocious creatures and a dire shortage of provisions compounded their suffering. Meanwhile, a man named Graham and a merchant named Poro held a special license that allowed them to trade with the wild elves, giving them access to scarce supplies. In this grim setting, Edie and Yuki, latterly uniting their blades in a shared purpose, fought tirelessly for their people's survival. From a vantage point, the protagonist watched these events unfold, filled with a sense of duty and hope. On another note, a young girl with silvery hair and immaculate attire knelt in prayer before an altar, beseeching a deity named Ar for divine guidance and aid. Behind her, Graham, the veteran warrior, was just about to announce that it was almost time, only a little longer until their fate would be decided. In this tumultuous time, struggles over resources were fierce. Among them, the discovery of a potential solution emerged. Poro shared intelligence about a place within the valley of the mountain's depths, an accessible site where mithril could be found easily. Such a metal was crucial, for with more mithril they could secure much-needed supplies, especially food. Despite the soldiers' irritation at the suggestion, Edie leaned forward, determined to pursue this chance. He asked if they could journey toward the valley, with Poro indicating that it lay to the south, atop the mountain's summit. However, he admitted uncertainty about the path and if it was feasible. Undeterred, Edie declared his intention to try, explaining that the kingdom's fate rested on his actions. The others looked on with mixed feelings, some hopeful, others wary. Poro, thinking pragmatically, proposed that he would accompany Edie, but Edie quickly shook his head, highlighting the risks. This was not a matter for outsiders, not even strangers, since elves, who governed their villages with strict rules, would not tolerate trespassers. Edie reflected that he had once been a stranger himself, which earned him a stern nod from Poro, who agreed that they should proceed carefully. The prince's confidant, Yuck, approached him, expressing concern. He acknowledged Edie's desire to play the hero but confessed his own fears. His beloved was waiting for him outside, and he did not want to risk losing her. Though their relationship was a well-known secret, he wished to remain with her, deciding not to chase glory at the expense of his life. Meanwhile, back at a sacred site, a girl dressed in white with flowing hair lifted her prayers, pleading to Ar, one of the divine forces, for aid. Unbeknownst to her, Graham and Edie's other companions were only moments away from making critical decisions that could alter their destiny forever. As history recounts, the world of Estran was once a cradle of peace. But darkness descended when a war against monsters erupted, forcing the surviving populace to flee into hiding atop Mount Apido. Despite their efforts, life remained bleak, with savage creatures launching relentless assaults and food becoming increasingly scarce. However, through cunning and alliances, particularly trading with the wild elves, Graham and Poro managed to secure what little provisions they could. In their unwavering resolve, Edie and Yuki raised their blades for their people, standing firm amidst the chaos. From his vantage point, the protagonist observed their resilience, inspired by their courage and the hope that one day peace could be restored to Estran. Reba ponders deeply. This story revolves around a mysterious place, but it also reveals a sense of unrest. A group of young heroes is attempting to hunt ogres on their own. These monsters are formidable foes. They're hide tough and resilient. Ogres heal rapidly and possess limited intelligence, yet they can raise everything in their path. To aid these individuals solely with their sharp vision is no easy task, especially without the aid of Yuki. Fortunately, they are strong enough so that few can stand against them. Yed has already defeated all members of the Black Lion Legion, a feat that leaves them some hope, though nothing is certain. The challenge remains daunting, but they press on. Suddenly, an all-knowing voice echoes in the air, calling out, "Please, listen." The protagonist hears the gentle voice of a young girl with white hair, praying fervently. Confused, he wonders what is happening and who she might be. She is a kind-hearted maiden asking for courage to help her people. Then, a divine mission emerges. Saint Selena requests aid. She beseeches for salvation. It is a sacred task. Spread the teachings of a pious prophet of God, who helps others through Saint Selena's guidance. There is also a special opportunity intertwined with this mission. When Selena prays, the hero has 3 minutes to speak or exchange items with her. The protagonist is taken aback, contemplating, "Wow, this could be useful." The girl, seemingly confused herself, appears to sense his presence. Her voice seems to reach him directly into his mind, startling him. Before doing anything, he realizes he must organize things in the garden. He heads back to where the pterodon patrols are gathered, wearing sunglasses under the sun. Why are they all dressed like that? He gathers all the warriors and explorers to explain urgently that they have an important mission. They need to locate the magic circle on Mount Apido. The explorers are tasked with monitoring the survivors there. If trouble arises, they must alert the strongest. Some of his bravest remain with him for an essential task, delivering a sword to Prince Iskal. His current weapons are inadequate for the looming dangers ahead. He observes his courageous group, noting their valor. Dogo, questioning Biam, asks if he's willing to let him go. Biam replies that it's not yet time. He needs more strength to face the enemy's presence. Until then, they can only wait. Frustrated, Dogo declares he's tired of waiting. Soon, he fears, they will all die simply from lingering in anticipation. A heated discussion erupts again. We see Grammy from Hack converse with Poro. Poro comments, "As expected of you, man. The prince has left and now this is perfect for us." The man responds, "It could be nobility, but he's just a boy. This world is too harsh to rely solely on a sword." Grammy chuckles, saying she hopes the man beside her will also perish. The man then inquires about their progress. Poro reports that the wild elves are using him to hunt monsters. They tested this on captured orcs, and the results were astonishing. With just a sniff, the orcs become frantic. Someone is providing drugs to these creatures, confident that no matter how skilled their enemies are, they will fall in the blink of an eye. The man warns him to speak quietly and to celebrate only when everything is finished. Poro responds affirmatively, urging him to do his part diligently. A loud slam of a door echoed through the scene, signaling the villain's arrival. He clearly believed himself to be superior, thinking that the scoundrel considered himself better than everyone else. The villain's confidence was misplaced, full of arrogance. Meanwhile, the dark hero, the good-hearted Cruz Oscura, watched silently from afar, observing the chaos unfold outside. Through the window, the man declared boldly, "Prince Iskal, once you vanish from this world, I will no longer be a mere man. I will ascend as the new ruler of Astron, and even Saint Selena will have to bow before me. You shall witness everything from the depths of hell." Our hero, hidden in the shadows, watched the conflict with a grim expression, thinking bitterly, "Damn scoundrels, fools." His gaze shifted to Selena's house. He urgently thought, "Say a prayer, girl. I don't have much time." The system's voice echoed in his mind, noting that things seemed to be going well on the other side. The fighting continued fiercely. Individuals cut through enemies here and there, gradually gaining ground. The hero was impressed, sensing they might actually have a chance to defeat the formidable foes and their trembling leaders. One enemy tried to retreat but was swiftly struck down. The leader, an ruthless ogre, showed no mercy and received a blow to the leg, stumbling clumsily to the ground. Another opponent's sword sliced through his back, ending his life. These enemies painted the forest in blood, their brutal assault relentless. Yuck shouted, "There's another sword," but Ed responded calmly, "No, mine is already broken." Yuck's worry was evident as he said, "Just wish my sword hadn't shattered." Suddenly, someone turned their back on the chaos. A man, resolute, threw his weapon far away. Only the drugged-up Horus remained, charging at the unfortunate figure standing unwaveringly. Sung Yuk warned him to be cautious, but something was out of the ordinary. An unexpected move passed through an orc named E.T., leaving him visibly confused. Once again, the scene shifted. Selena, stunning and serene, knelt in prayer. She beseeched the heavens, "Please, protect this land, the prince, and his people." The system announced, "First prayer completed. Selena, a disciple of Ark, has successfully offered her prayer. You may now send God's apostles to aid this disciple." Our protagonist was confused, wondering, "What is this?" A click confirmed the mission. Apostle of God. Commander Terradrone verified, and his small, luminous companion radiated excitement. Returning to the fray, the hero, known as the HRO, was struck in the chin. He observed, "Look who's hitting him," as another ogre approached to attack. The strike was blocked effortlessly. Then another enemy appeared, only to be swiftly knocked down. It stood still, doing nothing at the moment. Yuck told him to wake up, urging him to act. Ed glanced sideways and together, they charged at the ogre's leg. One leapt onto its back, the other aimed for his calf. Fighting here and there, Yuck mentioned that the injuries weren't deep enough. Ed warned him to stay cautious, but Yuck, determined as a penalty taker in a high-stakes match, was thrown aside again. "Wow, I thought he was dead," Yuck said, surprised he was still standing. The others helped him to his feet, cautioning him to be careful. Meanwhile, the Terradrone faced a one-on-one fight. Yet another ogre approached. The Terradrone pressed its horns into the creature, sending it flying toward its companion. With a nearly romantic headbutt, the two collided fiercely. The Terradrone, standing tall, winked at Ed, leaving the hero baffled as to why this beast was helping them. From above, the hero saw that the Terradrones seemed exponentially stronger, especially since their transformation. The scene was a chaos of courage, strength, and unexpected allies, all fighting tirelessly for victory. Within the realm of the Apostles of God, the only notable drawback lay in the exorbitant cost of the essential substances required for their sustenance. Yet, this was the sole method to support the system's vitality. To prolong the lifespan of an apostle, it demanded the expenditure of 5 essences every 10 minutes. Our protagonist chose to continue backing them unwaveringly. Ed, recognizing the luminous golden glow as a symbol of arcane power, watched as the ogres rose, growling ominously. Their voices echoed with defiance. "We shall perish here, damned greens." A struggling Yuck fought to rise after a heavy blow, asking anxiously, "Are you all right? Can you still fight?" Suddenly, Yuck stood up, asserting, "Yes, I am fine." Although he was merely pretending, these ogres possessed formidable resilience, making prolonged battles a disadvantage, as time was not on their side. They needed to eliminate the threat within 3 minutes. Lo then challenged him directly. Se-yuk charged at the giant, who seized his arm. Se-yuk hastened to act, knowing that healing would be necessary soon. Before the ogre could strike again, he activated a speed enhancement, causing his sword, glowing with a radiant light, to leap gracefully into the sky. He swiftly decapitated the ogre's head with a precise slash. Only the protagonist remained awestruck, murmuring, "Wow!" He defeated a berserker ogre with a single strike. The top hunter truly is exceptional. But just then, Se-yuk's blade shattered into 2. He chuckled, mentioning he had used too much ether on the weapon. A blinding flash erupted during the clash between the pterodrone and the ogre. Se-yuk, alarmed, watched as the beast charged toward him, but the ogre suddenly collapsed, dead. Struggling to rise, the creature muttered, "Today just isn't my day." While Ed commented dryly, "You're attracting a lot of attention today." Se-yuk responded, "It would be easier if I had a decent sword." The pterodrone, now larger and more formidable, thanked them and turned away, soaring into the distance. The champions waved farewell. Back at the church, a worker brought food to the saint, insisting she would become ill if she abstained. The saint, kind and gentle, steadfastly refused to eat herself and instead insisted on offering nourishment to a starving child. Returning to her prayers, she beseeched, "Ark, please bring some hope to our weary souls." Suddenly, a voice reached her, asking if Selena could hear it. Tears welled in her eyes as she responded, saying she could hear the voice of God. The soul called Ark merely identified himself as an apostle and requested that the prince be sent eastward. Confused, Selena listened as he explained that there was something important to find in that direction. Filled with excitement, she declared she would relay the message immediately. One of her companions, nearby, wondered if the saint had gone mad. As only 8 seconds remained in the conversation, he told her to wait a moment and warned her to stay away from the man, who was plotting something. Then he abruptly disconnected, leaving Selena puzzled. Our protagonist hoped she would grasp the meaning of the message. The man muttered to himself that it was better to depart now. Watching him retreat, she turned back and spoke to the sky, promising to take his words seriously. With her resolve firm, Jaya prepared to fulfill her part in the forest. Idia, feeling concerned, asked her friend if he was all right. He nodded, affirming that he was fine. Many times before, he had endured similar trials, and now everyone wondered what these monsters, creatures of Jia, were truly up to. The monsters were busy gathering crystals when suddenly, someone summoned the prince. As he glanced back, he saw a confused maid approaching. She hurried over, asking why he had come running and whether something had happened in the village. She explained she carried a message from Saint Selena, advising him to head east, where he would find what he was seeking. The prince was puzzled, as he believed the mithril was supposed to be located to the north. Edie inquired if Selena had actually told him to look there, and the maid responded that she was unsure, only that she had received an oracle. She turned to Edie, asking for her opinion. Edie admitted she had no idea and left the decision to the captain. He then suggested that perhaps these gigantic beetles were connected to Arkansas. If that was the case, they needed to investigate that possibility. Turning to the other knights, he announced they would split up to cover more ground, and they agreed. Sung-yuk quickly rushed forward and seized the type sword, but Edie advised him to stay calm, promising him a far better blade later. The scene shifted to Jia, who met with Jijin. She appeared puzzled, questioning what he was doing there. Our young hero merely smiled, mentioning that some time had passed since their last meeting. She stepped closer, asking why he was there, and he explained he had a favor to ask. She invited him inside, and he expressed his gratitude. Once inside, she asked if he truly wanted Sei-yu's sword. He confirmed it, and she looked confused, questioning why he needed her sword. Jia explained that he had heard Sunuk was in Gina at that moment. Her eyes lit up with excitement, asking if that was really true. He affirmed, stating he hadn't told her earlier because he didn't want to give false hope. Filled with determination, she stood and declared she would do anything to help. She hurried upstairs, asking him to wait a moment. A short while later, she returned with Sei-Yu's sword, a symbol of the contract with Brawler, which only the contract holder could wield. She described the sword as incredible, named the warrior's scream. She looked puzzled and asked how he knew its name. He revealed that the sword was called the Master Cat. When he tried to lift it, it was heavy, nearly causing him to fall. She explained that Sunuk's sword contained much more ether than other hunters' weapons. He carefully placed it into his bag, thanking her for lending it to him. Outside, she expressed her appreciation for everything, and he reassured her that he would find a way to bring Sunuk back. Jijin smiled, saying he believed he would succeed because she was an incredible person. The young hero blushed but replied that he had to leave. As he returned to the shop, he wondered where the troublemakers were. They stood just outside the door, hesitating but seemingly wanting to say something. One of them nudged the other, urging him to speak. Dogo was pushing Jia's foot, and Jia realized that perhaps he wanted to go with him. She gently stroked his head, indicating that it was all right, and, deep within the forest, they had their reasons for being there, moving cautiously under the canopy's shadow. As they advanced, Eddie suddenly recalled that this was the spot where they often made their escapes in the past. Realizing that something significant might lie hidden here, they decided to venture inside. Yet, unknown to them, someone was watching their every move from the shadows behind. Inside, a heated debate broke out about the countless tunnels of Mount Apido. Yenyu wondered aloud if the place where they had previously found Eddie was nearby. Eddie confirmed it and then asked Yenyu when he planned to return the favor. His friend laughed and joked that he was impatient, mentioning that the creatures he had already slain had paid the price. Yenyu chuckled at the joke and told Eddie to stop, for he had just spotted something unusual. Both looked down and agreed that it appeared suspicious. It would be strange if a trap was marked with an X on the ground, Yenyu said. He knelt and pressed his hand to the soil, testing whether anyone might be lurking beneath. The moment he touched the earth, the ground fractured, collapsing in an instant. Yenyu told Eddie that his debt had now been fully repaid. Eddie then instructed him to activate their sword, transform it into a torch, though Yenyu was reluctant. As they pressed further into the underground, something drew their attention. An ancient, gilded sword embedded in a stone. Yenyu asked if Eddie recognized it. Eddie responded that it was the seal of the realm of Estran and reached to claim it, curious how it had come to rest there. As he grasped the blade, the protagonist suddenly received multiple achievements. Breaking the seal unlocked new status and recognition. The prince, Raquel, now acknowledged by AR, could communicate freely and had gained a new skill, the ability to observe potential allies. Jaya watched Eddie with a smile, grateful and pondering why a gathering was forming in the Valley of the Griffins. A system message revealed that the Terradrones had assembled there and asked whether he would support them, as he always did. Confident, Eddie surveyed the entire army and decided to test his newly acquired ability. Noticing that the Terradrone's experience bar was at 95%, he understood another evolution was imminent, for they were already very strong. Wondering what would happen if he amplified their power even further, he recalled that many other Terradrones also had experience bars. The skill would be invaluable, but first they had to defeat the Griffins. With that purpose, he poured a substantial amount of experience points into his companions. Just then, Dogo appeared and called out to Jaya, who turned and asked what was wrong. The dog leapt into his bag and asked if he was hungry, but suddenly Dogo stole the sword. Jaya yelled for him to stop, warning that it was dangerous. Strangely, Dogo dashed toward a portal and stood there, sword raised before him. In that instant, the puppy began to glow, and the system announced that Growler was regaining the power he had lost. However, this process would cost 2,000 essences. The system warned that if it failed, Growler would revert to his primordial form. Jaya only had 2,300 essences, making the chances risky and the stakes high. Once, out of a desire to avoid disappointing his friend, he decided to withdraw everything, claiming it should be used by the others. A blinding light engulfed the area, and the entire essence's power transferred into a single dog. After a while, Jia found himself in a strange space. When he opened his eyes, the dog was enormous, looming right in front of him. Filled with curiosity, Jia gently stroked the creature, asking if it was his friend. However, the beast did not look pleased and grimaced in response. A voice spoke, revealing that it had been awaiting this moment alongside the messenger of God. It then advised Jia to stop being called by that ridiculous name. Startled, Jia broke out in a sweat, realizing how much he disliked that nickname. The dog, turning away, explained that it wasn't a matter of disliking the name itself, but simply not preferring that kind of title. With a hint of gratitude, it acknowledged Jia's help, saying that thanks to him, the world now had a new hope. Feeling somewhat ashamed and confused, Jia admitted he was uncertain of the situation. The dog warned him that his mission from this point forward was vital. The fate of everything, whether the world would be destroyed or restored, depended entirely on him. Suddenly, a bright light appeared, and the dog told Jia that time was running out. It urged him to become stronger. Confused, Jia protested, stating he was too old to be called a boy again. Once more, the blinding light enveloped him, and he awoke in a forest, lying on the grass. Dazed and uncertain about what had happened, he slowly rose, exhausted. Despite his weariness, he knew he had to stay focused. Resolute, especially knowing that Growler's mission was crucial, Jia decided to do his best. At that moment, a pterodrone swooped toward him. Jia accepted it calmly and picked up a book, recognizing that it was time to continue hunting griffins. He started to inscribe another spell. The scene shifted to waterfalls teeming with soaring griffins as they traversed mountain peaks. It couldn't believe they had finally found the lost seal. Son Yuk, frustrated, declared he wanted a weapon for himself. Turning to Ed, he warned that he needed to learn how to draw his sword properly before making any excuses. Especially since, if he didn't, the man, meaning the adversary, would turn against him with confidence. Son Yuk threatened that he would slit the man's throat if necessary, but Ed replied that those were his people, even if they had done terrible things. Son Yuk, sighing, implied that if Ed preferred to remain blind to the truth, so be it. Suddenly, Ed looked upward. Something seemed to catch his attention. The entire mountain was shining brilliantly, and he had no idea what was happening. Meanwhile, Jia, back to writing in his book, was observing the battle. He noted that the pterodrones were gaining numbers. The problem was that while pterodrones could only fly forward, griffins possessed full aerial control and could change direction at will. The only one who had any real chance was the armored pterodrone knight. Then Jia saw a group emerging from a cave, carrying a net and looking resolute. Jia smiled, convinced that capturing griffins was a brilliant plan. The nets were cast toward the flying beasts, ensnaring several of them. However, the fight remained fierce, and the pterodrones encountered difficulties. Suddenly, something shined brightly. The potential of the pterodrone knight had reached its maximum capacity, filling the air with a shimmering aura. The small figure raised his arm confidently, having just gained the power of a shockwave ability. Jia watched in awe as the creature lifted its glowing purple claw, unleashing a sweeping energy blast that obliterated all the griffins nearby. With a triumphant thumbs up, Jia expressed his amazement at the display of strength. From a distance, Idia and Yuk were blinded momentarily by the intense light. Recognizing that it was the same beetle they had encountered before, they understood that these new developments might mean aid was on its way. In that moment, the appearance of a colossal beetle before them changed everything. Before they could speak, the creature drew a simple outline of a house onto the ground with its leg. Confused, they hesitated, uncertain of its meaning. However, when the beetle pointed toward the city, clarity dawned. It was signaling for them to return quickly. Son Yuk suspected that something might be amiss in the town, and Eddie, grateful for the creature's guidance, decided to leave the pterodrone to it. Watching them depart, Jia felt that this was the best action they could take in this situation. The two dashed off at full speed, hoping that their loved ones and allies were safe within the village. Arriving at the outskirts, Song-yuk was stunned by what he saw. Corpses littered across the ground. He muttered in disbelief that finally, someone had taken action. Eddie, recognizing the fallen soldiers, identified them as members of Varan Tram's forces. Suddenly, Song-yuk drew his sword and pressed it against Eddie's face, uttering a vow of vengeance. Eddie urged them to quicken their pace, indicating that Santa must have been kidnapped. Song-yuk promised to hunt down the scoundrel responsible for taking her, asking where they might have been taken. Eddie suggested that they could be hiding in the nearest town, and the scene shifted to a grand castle. Guards at the entrance watched as others passed through, unaware of the tense confrontation unfolding within. Santa was being held captive among nobles. A stout man remarked that Eden Skal was not with the group. Another assured him that Skal would come for her himself. The noble then questioned the whereabouts of the infamous prince. The knight responded with disdain, claiming that he should have ended the prince's life long ago. The noble echoed that the prince deserved execution, proposing that they hang him in the castle and imprison the rest. Santa, crying out to Varan, demanded to know if he truly believed he could escape justice. She warned that Ar would punish him for his deeds. Varan, clutching her face roughly, snarled that if Ar were alive, the world wouldn't be in this state. He sneered, telling her to stop praying to false gods and consider serving him instead. At that moment, a sword was pressed against Varan's throat from behind. Turning around, he saw one of his own men, actually Eden Skal, who declared he would no longer sacrifice innocent lives for Varan's greed. Realization dawned on Varan that his plan was crumbling, and he ordered his men to kill Eden Skal. Song-yuk then appeared, demanding to know why they assumed Eden was alone. He warned everyone that resisting would only lead to death. Spotting Hyen kneeling, he said there was no need for false appearances anymore. Seconds later, both men found themselves immobilized, with Eden Skal stepping forward. He stated that the prince would regret this cruel turn of events, emphasizing that he had given them a chance for salvation. With unwavering resolve, he drew his sword and declared his intent to serve the people. From now on, the men would recognize the mark, the seal upon his blade. Raising the sword skyward, he proclaimed his dedication to reconstructing the kingdom in the image of the divine. High above, the giant deity watched over everything, observing silently. Having completed the second mission, the eradication of all evil, the focus shifted to the third task, establishing the foundation for a new realm. He assisted Prince Tsal and Messenger Selena in reclaiming their positions, now needing to expand the community of survivors to forge a fresh kingdom. As he received multiple quests simultaneously, he also undertook a particular objective, forging a pact with the Holy Order. This alliance would foster trust among the populace without relying solely on prayers. Another part of his mission, labeled 3A, involved demonstrating the qualities of a true king. Though Eden Skal bore the king's seal, he still had to prove his leadership virtues. This included clearing out remaining monsters on Mount Apito and locating a specific site, which was part of his reward, a sacred relic known as the Holy Jade. Meanwhile, the sanctuary remained shrouded in mystery, possibly veiled in fog, but now with contact established, he could undertake the necessary tasks. Through the oracle, he received a message that the Griffin invasion had also been thwarted, leaving the Pterodrone creatures jubilant. Recognizing their happiness, he ordered them to handle the Griffin carcasses and to transfer the gathered essence to the garden. During the cleanup, one of the Pterodrones found Griffin eggs and, exhausted from the many missions, events, and efforts, he wondered what was happening now. Suddenly, the system sent a new notification, an update signifying that the Pterodrones had discovered a rare material called Dimitris. Consequently, the labor force of the Pterodrone army was reinforced, now officially part of his forces. Observing these charming creatures, he found their presence delightful. One small Pterodrone with a tiny hat caught his eye. Known for their skill in gathering, mining, and crafting, they could even handle metal cubes. The creature presented a small cube to him, claiming it was mined first. Upon receiving this, he was granted a reward, with the option to select one of 3 enhancements: a mid-tier artifact, a boost to the number of Terradrone workers, or a new skill. Jaya considered all options appealing but was particularly intrigued by the artifact. As soon as he clicked to choose, a surge of purple energy materialized before him, and suddenly, a dagger appeared in his hand. It was a Dimitri's blade of exceptional quality, with a 30% elemental resistance, perfect for survival. Yet, memories of Se Yuk's lower resistance surfaced. At that moment, a knight arrived, and Jaya inquired about his condition. The knight felt proud because his wings were now adorned with Dimitri's. Jaya reminded him that he couldn't monopolize strength alone. Turning his gaze toward the village, he wondered what was happening there. A crowd had gathered around a bonfire, celebrating and praising Eddie for his leadership, while Se Yuk complained about not knowing the details of the kidnapping plot. Nearby, the 2 men still faced imprisonment, and Eddie announced their impending exile from the village the following day. Se Yuk considered that a generous act, believing they might return, but Eddie explained that such generosity was essential for a true leader. Frustrated, Se Yuk remarked that Eddie's kindness made him unfit to rule as king. His friend, meanwhile, placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, reminding him that he would always remember his advice. Hyen then brought up the pressing issue of food, which largely depended on hunting. Eddie proposed opening a trade route to the north and negotiating with the elves. Suddenly, Selena appeared, calling out to him. She asked if something was wrong, then declared she needed to see something herself. She began to pray, surrounded by a blue aura, raising her hands as a golden message manifested. Hyen explained that the message was directed at the royal family, authored by the Apostle Selena. She approached him, confirming that this was what the oracle had foretold. Eddie contemplated the divine messenger, considering her spiritual authority, as Hyen was delighted that Selena was completing her missions. This, he thought, marked another step forward in their divine destiny. Upon completion, a sense of freedom in communication filled the atmosphere. Son Yuk remarked that the mysterious golden glow might be linked to the scarab, as both entities radiated a similar luminous sheen. Selena inquired about the scarab, and Edie explained that the creature had saved her during a fierce battle. Son Yuk advised Selena to inform her deity that a lost individual was nearby, smiling gently. She responded that she would seek a way to help him find his way back to where he belonged. Observing this exchange, Jaya declared that enough had been shared for today and vowed to provide more details the following day. He informed the Terradrone that the day had been long and that there was still much left to do. Before leaving, he instructed Biam and Growler to return home. Suddenly, he remembered they were still in Gina Biam's domain. Calling him, Jaya caused confusion, but then noticed something. The griffin hunting had yielded far more essence than expected. At that moment, within the griffin's dungeon, Suyin's group was following the advice they had received. She opened a tome and summoned a network of leaf-like pages. The papers adhered to the eyes of the flying griffins, causing them to stumble and fall. All at once, the griffins lunged in an attempt to attack. Een activated a sword surge, slicing the creature's midair. The group found the fight surprisingly effortless until the knight sensed something amiss on his back. Guan had conjured a massive ball of fire, causing the unfortunate creatures to scatter in desperation, trembling with fear of their lives. The knight's team was exhilarated, remarking on how easy the battle had been. However, some of the group with singed hair grumbled that they might go bald if they continued to get so close. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled, and debris started falling. As the dust clouded the air, everyone hurried to shield their faces. Een asked what was happening. Before them, a hidden cave had opened, sparking curiosity about whether it was a secret dungeon. Een suggested a quick investigation before retreating promptly, but one was eager to conclude everything swiftly because she was confident. Jae-jin tried to dissuade her, warning that an unknown dungeon was incredibly dangerous. The white-haired boy attempted to calm her down, asserting there was no need to rush. In a strange turn, he stepped on something and tripped, falling flat on his face in front of everyone. A girl hurried to tend to his head, apparently recognizing his clumsiness. Suddenly, Suyin stepped forward, instructing everyone to leave. She recognized the pattern on the ground, the same circle they had seen back at the castle. The two men were being expelled once again. The knight asked if they were certain about proceeding, and Hyan affirmed they would just continue. Graham warned that the prince would regret this decision, but Eden Scal silently observed, approaching and drawing his sword. With a firm voice, he offered the opposing man a second chance, placing his blade near his neck and warning him to stop risking his life. He stated that if he dared to interfere with the others again, his neck would be severed. Turning to the others, the knights declared they could leave if they wished. Frightened, the two men fled in panic. Yet at this moment Song Yuk pressed his hand to his forehead, muttering that the damned creature named Grawler would pay dearly for this. His expression betrayed a deep-seated anger and resolve. Edie looked on, confusion flickering across his features, unsure of what to make of Song Yuk's grim determination. Meanwhile, Song Yuk mentioned that the young boy they had encountered was far too fragile, too soft for the harsh realities they faced. Jia, observing quietly from the side, thought to herself that the king was genuinely kind-hearted. His willingness to aid such vulnerable beings brought her a strange sense of peace. Deciding that divine guidance was their best hope, Song Yuk made a firm resolve within himself. He acknowledged that the mountain harbored numerous creatures and that after the loss of the last scout, it would be unwise to take reckless risks. With a decisive nod, he activated his divine guide, a celestial artifact meant to lead him through perilous territory. His gaze fixed on the land ahead, he addressed the Pterodron, an formidable beast summoned by their need, and reaffirmed his trust. It was to accompany and assist them once more. Suddenly, a swirling portal materialized before the gateway. From it, the Pterodron emerged in a towering form much larger than before. Both Song Yuk and his companions immediately recognized the signs. This was the work of the apostle mentioned earlier. As the creature stepped forward, it pointed sharply northward, an indication of the direction they needed to pursue. Without hesitation, the knights turned to their comrades, declaring their intent to follow that lead, convinced that it was connected to the recent troubles in the Griffin Valley. Meanwhile, Song Yuk's only concern was when he would find a proper sword. He was eager to equip himself with better weaponry. The Pterodron paused, then extended a massive claw toward a nearby mountain range, its motion deliberate and measured. The group watched in confusion as the beast suddenly struck the mountain with a powerful blow, unleashing a shockwave that forced them to shield their eyes. The impact tore through a shimmering camouflage barrier that had concealed something beneath the rocks. Song Yuk immediately scowled at the beast, chiding it for not giving them prior warning before causing such destruction. Edie, however, cautioned him not to be too harsh, insisting that the Pterodron had only good intentions. With a mighty leap, the creature took flight into the sky, soaring above them. The knights hurried closer, asking if everyone was unharmed. Song Yuk told the prince to stay back as Hyan examined him carefully. The elder hesitated, reluctant to leave the prince vulnerable, but Song Yuk insisted that they could not afford to let him take such risks. They moved cautiously toward the cave, until Hyan's keen eyes caught a glimmer in the distance. With a smile, Song Yuk discovered a hidden cache of supplies, provisions the two noblemen had concealed from the villagers. To Edie, he reported that this stash could sustain them for quite some time. They swiftly loaded the cart, while Edie warned them to be wary of monsters lurking nearby. As Song Yuk exited the cave, he was grumbling about not having found any new weapons. Still, he nodded to himself, thinking that now, with their immediate needs met, it was time to prioritize finding a way back home. Suddenly, a cry echoed ahead. One of the men was on the ground, desperately pleading for help. While the others hurried to respond, the group saw the creature, an enormous predator called Grawler, looming terrifyingly over the fallen man. Song Yuk and Song Yuk stepped forward, positioning themselves protectively in front of the injured villager, though both knew that facing the beast head-on would be perilous. Grawler brawled with razor-sharp teeth bared, and Edie announced he would flank to the right. Song Yuk firmly told him to stay put, emphasizing that a prince must prioritize the safety of his people. As the confrontation unfolded, Seon Yuk commanded Edie to retreat and ordered the villagers to abandon the area immediately. Edie cast a backward glance, silently praying that Seon Yuk would survive this encounter, as Growler's massive claws tore into the earth, creating a destructive blast that threatened to obliterate everything nearby. Seon Yuk was confident, convinced that the challenge was merely a simple exercise. However, an unusual window suddenly appeared before him, signaling that the trial had begun. The test of the howling had officially started, and he was required to demonstrate his strength. Without warning, Growler lunged toward him. Seon Yuk, meanwhile, was staring at the system window like an idiot, oblivious to the imminent danger. Just in time, he caught a glimpse of a shadow looming over him, and with quick reflexes, managed to block Growler's attack with his sword. Realizing that this confrontation would not be easy, Seon Yuk knew he had to act decisively. He let go of his weapon's handle and rolled to the side, dodging a crushing blow. He murmured to himself that the fight was becoming too intense. If this was the test, it seemed he would have to take things seriously. Activating a special ability, he infused his sword with a crimson aura, which made Growler's gaze lock onto him with unwavering focus. Seon Yuk lunged forward. Instead of charging straight ahead, he slid beneath the creature's belly and swiftly aimed for its hind leg. His intent was to sever the limb, but the agile dog deftly avoided his strike. Seon Yuk was taken aback by the creature's intelligence and received a heavy blow in response, tumbling to the ground like discarded trash. It was then he realized that confronting such a force would be far from simple. The power emanating from Growler was at least on a level comparable to that of a catastrophe. Meanwhile, the group inside the carriage faced a horde of goblins. Hyen and Edie led the effort, screaming commands and urging everyone to hold their ground until they reached the safety of the village. They knew they desperately needed a way to assist Seon Yuk. Having exhausted his apostolic power, Jia was left uncertain about his next move. Ominous pop-up windows appeared, indicating that intervention in the current mission was impossible because crucial events were unfolding beyond his reach. All he could see was a fog cloud obscuring his vision. Unaware of the chaos unfolding inside Seon Yuk, Dreer was relentlessly attacking him. The young boy continued to dodge, though fatigue was setting in. He was anxious to understand the origin of that mysterious window and the nature of the howling trial. Nevertheless, he pressed on, feeling the urgency to take things seriously. He activated a high-speed agility skill and advanced toward Growler. But this dog was extraordinarily clever. It easily evaded his approach. Seon Yuk tried to shift sideways to avoid its attack, but the creature anticipated his movement perfectly. Still, Seon Yuk had a trick up his sleeve. Just as the beast was about to strike, he employed a quick movement ability. In an instant, the sharp-eyed dog dodged effortlessly to the side. Seon Yuk found himself off balance, stumbling and unable to recover his footing. Another heavy blow sent him crashing against a nearby tree. The boy fell to the ground, dazed and helpless. Growler, wagging his tail, sneered, claiming Seon Yuk was too weak compared to previous generations, unprepared for the immense power he now faced. Seon Yuk tried to muster himself, slowly rising and insisting that he still wasn't finished, asking Growler to wait a moment. But the dog only raised its paw, uttering that he was far too fragile for this fight. Expecting Seon Yuk to make a move, the boy's opponent simply hesitated for a moment. Yet the moment was lost. A powerful blow struck Seon Yuk, and he was left sprawled on the ground, unable to react. Growler advanced, swinging his sword and muttering that he couldn't die just yet. At that instant, the dog suddenly bit down on the sword. His chances had drastically diminished, yet suddenly the timer hit 0, signaling the end of the trial. Dreer, with a confident smile, remarked that he was beginning to soften. Seon Yuk was left utterly bewildered, pondering what this could mean. The golden hour had passed, and Growler observed that Seon Yuk was merely a simple farm boy gifted with a destined fate, an opportunity presented solely for him. As energy coalesced around him, a sword began to form. Drawn toward it, Seon Yuk felt a strange familiarity, recognizing the weapon as his from a long-past dungeon. He wondered how it had come to be here now, yet instinctively he knew this blade. With a triumphant gesture, he raised the shining sword to the sky, contemplating whether this divine power truly existed, as the saint had claimed. Suddenly, a shout tore through the air, reminding him it was time to retreat from the fog's grasp. Without hesitation, Se-yuk broke into a run, determined to save Edie. Suddenly, Jaya was informed that the mission was complete and that Grueler was returning. As before, he reappeared, now looking like a charming little dog. Jaya, joyfully recognizing him, scooped him into her arms. With his energy spent, the creature was smaller now, and Jaya stroked him affectionately, murmuring how much she had missed him. Meanwhile, in the forest, goblins were being slaughtered without mercy. Edie's group was nearing the village when Hyen urged her to look behind. She thought it might be Se-yuk, but instead, an army of energized goblins, glowing with red energy, was approaching. Edie prepared for battle, knowing that the danger would escalate if these creatures entered the town. She swiftly dispatched several goblins, their bodies falling easily as she fought. Inside the village, the goblin chieftain pounded on the gate, while everyone inside held on desperately, trying to keep the creatures out. The gate cracked under the pressure, the goblins eager to break through. The monstrous being outside raised its mace, concentrating a pulsating purple energy. Suddenly, Se-yuk sensed something unusual, an ominous presence approaching. He turned to look, but it was already too late. Se-yuk had just arrived. He was stunned to see his friend standing there, and in a blur of motion, half of the goblin chief's body collapsed to the ground. Smiling, Se-yuk asked if Edie had been waiting for him all along. Now, wielding his new sword, he stood atop a wolf, ready for battle. The remaining goblins, frightened, fled in terror. Edie, puzzled, asked where he had gotten the wolf and the sword. Se-yuk explained that it was a wolf he had recognized, and that the sword was a gift. He dismounted, ready to demonstrate what he meant, and tapped the sword with the creature. He commanded, "Cancel," and the summoned entity dissolved into the air, returning to the mark on the blade. He then revealed that the gigantic wolf they had seen earlier was, in fact, his guardian. Nearly dead, he thought he had lost everything, until the wolf declared it was his destiny and handed him the sword. The only strange part was that this sword was the same one he had wielded in another world. It suggested there was another way for him to return home. Edie listened intently, understanding now that having a guardian was fitting, considering all he had been through. Once, the gods would never support someone as malevolent as him. Suddenly, the door swung open, and everyone turned around. It was Princess Selena, rushing in with concern, asking if Eddie was okay. He assured her that he was perfectly fine and that they had successfully driven away the goblins. The most important news was that they had also discovered a large amount of food. The princess expressed her gratitude to the prince for his hard work, while Yuk grumbled that he deserved thanks as well, claiming he had put in much more effort. A holy figure responded that such gratitude was merely a recompense for the blasphemies he had committed. Eddie suggested they stop joking and enter, as everyone was hungry. With that, they returned to the village. Jay, observing from afar, noticed that most seemed to have arrived home intact except for Greyer. He advised that they should also head back, as Greyer must be exhausted. They passed through the portal, and Jay called for Biam, who arrived happily. Biam eagerly showed Greyer, now much smaller, to Biam, who immediately bit Greyer's neck and declared that he had finally done a good job. Biam placed Greyer in a cave and told him to focus on recovering, giving him a gentle pat. Greyer growled in response, telling Biam to stop being so friendly. Biam then beckoned Jay, who wanted to rest on her lap. Jay explained that it had been a long day for everyone, and they would speak with Ian tomorrow, especially. At that moment, a tremor shook the ground, signaling a visitor was near. Jay returned to the shop and asked who was there. It was Sunan's group of adventurers, and she told them to open the door. She found it odd that they were there so late at night. Upon opening the door, she saw Won and Jijin with them. One immediately confronted her, questioning why she had taken so long to open the door. She replied that she had not been doing anything important but invited them all inside, remarking that it was cold outside. Over a meal, they inquired about their visit. Sunan showed a drawing of a mark they had previously found. Jay recognized it as a magical circle and asked what the issue was. Ian explained they had also found the same mark in the Griffin's dungeon. This caught Jay's attention, remembering that the Pterodrone had also fought against Griffins. One mentioned having used an incredible ability that helped them discover a secret passage. The group admitted it was mostly by chance, and nearly all of them had died trying to investigate. Suddenly, Jay stood up, claiming she needed to ask a favor from everyone. She began to leave, and the group grew eager, wondering why she was so excited. Jay started recounting a story about one. Suddenly, a cry for help echoed. She reappeared at the door, pleading for assistance because the object was very heavy. She carried a bundle of essences and handed each person one, instructing them to take it. One was surprised, remarking she had never seen such large essences before. Jay explained that if they placed these essences within a circle, they could create a portal. She asked Jijin if she could lead the mission, and Jijin, excited, agreed immediately. Sometime later, they found themselves once more in front of a cave. The group advanced cautiously, prepared for what lay ahead. Along the winding path circling the ancient tree, the grass had begun to grow lush and green now that the threat of monsters had vanished. Jia turned to Biam, suggesting that perhaps the villagers could settle in this tranquil spot. The only major obstacle remaining was Mount Apido, a place shrouded in danger and mystery. He hadn't anticipated such a significant influx of creatures emerging from that mountain to launch an attack. Curiously, only Edie and Se-Yuk had left the safety of the village to confront the beastly horde. Se-Yuk immediately drew his sword, preparing for what was bound to be a swift encounter. Edie urged him not to hold back, and already, Se-Yuk's loyal wolf companion began to materialize, calling forth his trusted creature. A small, fierce wolf. Jia commented softly that the boy had yet to learn how to properly name his pets, which left Biam momentarily speechless. With commanding decisiveness, they pressed forward toward their destination, the wild elven village. On their journey, all of the oozes they encountered fell swiftly, a feat that impressed Biam, who remembered that Se-Yuk was known as the greatest hunter. Edie was also remarkably skilled, effortlessly slicing through oozes with precise strikes. Suddenly, he turned and called for Se-Yuk to come closer. At that moment, a formidable ogre was about to strike, but Edie calmly focused his energy and swiftly severed all of the ogre's fingers. He instructed Se-Yuk to continue advancing, assuring him that he would follow closely. Se-Yuk knew he had to deal with the group ahead, but was momentarily delayed when a shadow suddenly veiled him. Orcs, trembling with fear, saw the arrival of the Pterodrone, a massive creature that had descended rapidly from above. Seizing Edie by his cloak, the Pterodrone lifted him and carried him away, leaving the orcs scattered in the dust. Se-Yuk remarked that the gods were far too merciful, aiding even when the situation was barely challenging. Jia, however, simply smiled, asserting there was no point wasting time on such sentiments. Together, they pushed onward, crossing cascading waterfalls from above. Esoteric thoughts crossed Edie's mind as he realized the Mount Apido was much larger than he had previously imagined. He wondered if the legendary wild elven village truly lay beneath those heights. As they gazed downward, they saw Se-Yuk nearby, and Edie turned to the Pterodrone, acknowledging its kindness. The creature accelerated, prompting Edie to request a slower pace. After a while, they finally arrived at their destination, though the young boy was utterly exhausted. Se-Yuk and his wolf chuckled at his plight before he could thank the Pterodrone. The creature took flight again, leaving them to catch their breath. Se-Yuk appreciated the kindness shown by the Pterodrone but also wondered why they had been brought to the elven village, especially since he knew nothing about negotiations. Edie assured him he would handle that part, but he was eager to discover if the elves had a way to send Se-Yuk back home. The reason for their inquiry was that the wild elves were considered the oldest and wisest beings in the land. Sayuk chuckled softly, teasing that his friend seemed eager for him to leave. Suddenly, an arrow whistled through the air and struck the ground between them, prompting Edie to remark that the elves seemed pleased to see them. From the high branches of a nearby tree, an elf commanded them to stay still. Edie explained that they were survivors from the mountaintop village near Mount Apito and only wished to speak. However, the elven beings were reluctant to converse, asserting that they no longer communicated with humans. As Edie prepared to unsheath his sword, the tension grew thick, and the air seemed to tense with the unspoken danger of conflict. In a tense silence, Edie drew his sword and remained motionless as the entire gathering of elves pointed their weapons at him, making it clear they wouldn't leave the area easily. Yuk questioned Edie about his certainty that they could win this confrontation, but Edie stepped forward once more, revealing himself as Eden Skal, Prince of the Estran realm. A tall elf descended from a nearby tree, and Edie presented his sword, signaling that he could verify the seal to confirm his identity. The grumpy elf, visibly annoyed, claimed the situation proved that Edie was aligned with Poro and Graham. Without hesitation, both of them drew their blades, each aiming for the other's throat. The elf warned Edie to release his weapon or face death, to which Edie replied that he knew what the two men had done and had come to resolve the matter. The elf, skeptical, accused Edie of not believing him because the two men had stolen food from his people and slaughtered some of his kin. Calmly, Edie lowered his sword and instructed Seo to do the same, which left him perplexed. Edie then ordered him to obey the elf's commands, and soon, the elf decreed that they be bound and taken to the village. The duo was led away by a contingent of elves, unaware of where they were being taken. The members of the tribe whispered and gestured among themselves about the newcomers. Seo muttered that it would have been better to display strength before attempting negotiations, but Edie told him not to worry. He believed the elves were rational and would give them a chance to speak before things escalated. Nevertheless, the gray-haired elf pushed Seo aside, telling him to stop talking. They arrived at a cell and the same elf ordered their imprisonment, kicking him in the process. Seo grumbled that it would have been better to stay in the village rather than be humiliated, but Adele urged him to remain calm, promising that everything would be resolved. Song Yuk decided to rest, holding hope that a solution would soon be found. Observing their situation, the gray-haired elf watched silently as Edie wondered what the two men had done to the elves. After some time, a group of young elves came to look at the humans, their eyes filled with surprise. They had never seen humans before. Guards arrived to escort them out, and the gray-haired elf brought an elder to speak with the prisoners. The elder ordered their release, confusing the gray elf, who questioned the elder's authority. The elder explained that if they truly wished to escape, they could break the bars at any moment. He then asked Eden Skal if he believed this was true. Edie was astonished that the elder knew his name, recalling that they had known each other before losing contact with the Estran realm. Approaching, the elder asked why they were there. Edie responded that, before discussing their reasons, he wanted to know what the two men had done to the elves. The elf at their throats drew a dagger, demanding they cease lying. The elder calmed them and explained that he didn't know precisely what had happened but was there to take responsibility. Confused, the elder asked if they truly had no idea of the events that led them there. Edie admitted that they had also faced hardships in their village because those men had hidden food supplies there. He added that only recently, they found many hidden items in Monte Apito. The elder, still confused, expressed his belief that the land was teeming with monsters, yet Yuk mentioned that most of them had been dealt with. Thanks to the assistance of a giant beetle, the threat had diminished significantly. Still, a few creatures remained, though their numbers had drastically dropped compared to before. Both he and Siddle found it strange that the males had headed north. When they delivered supplies, Ed explained that, during the exile of the males, they seemed to have devised some sort of backup plan. Siddle expressed distrust, suspecting they might be deceiving them. Ed assured that it was a misunderstanding. His only intention was to reopen trade routes and to handle the monsters lingering in the area. Siddle asked which trade Ed was referring to. Ed pointed to the minerals they had been exchanging for food. Sung Yuk then suggested that those bastards had tricked both sides, implying some deception was at play. The old man commented that if that was true, then possibly a third party was involved further north. However, he warned that trust was precarious. Both sides could be lying to smuggle more supplies from the region. He questioned what needed to be done to prove their innocence. The old man said they must bring back the minerals they were supposed to receive, then added that the person from another realm would come to retrieve them. Ed would stay behind, puzzled by these words. Sung Yuk asked how the old man knew he was from another dimension. The elder explained that all elves were connected to the mother tree, and individuals from other worlds had appeared multiple times throughout history. Yuk smiled knowingly, acknowledging that they definitely knew something. He assured the elder that he would handle it immediately and merely asked for his sword back, concerned it might be needed if danger arose. Siddle was hesitant, but the elder nodded in agreement. Soon, Sung Yuk found himself in the forest. The elf handed him his sword, warning him not to do anything reckless if he wanted to see the prince alive. Yuk chuckled, saying he wouldn't underestimate the prince, or they'd both end up on the ground. The elf responded that he would never lose against a human, ever. Just then, a strange breeze swept over them. Yuk smiled and said that the Lord Beetle had arrived, not alone, but with a whole group, bringing abundant essence. The elder was surprised to see the workers of the World Tree still active. Meanwhile, Gia wondered why a new area had suddenly opened up. She had discovered the Wild Elf Village, which received its fourth mission. Uncover the secret of the Wild Elves once again. To gain access, she needed to clear monsters from another region as she had before. Most of the elves were uncertain and confused by what they saw. Yuk was greeting a bunch of pterodrones bringing mithril. Clearly, Gia was responsible for giving out this mission, instructing the pterodrones to assist the prince and Sung Yuk in whatever they needed. The pterodrone then threw a massive block into the old man's hands, prompting him to question why these drones were helping them. Son Yuk stated plainly that their assistance was obvious, as there was no other reason for suddenly bringing the missile. The pterodrone pointed toward a side where patches of green grass could be seen. An old man inquired if he wanted those, and the pterodrone nodded affirmatively. Jia smiled, acknowledging that a good job had been done, and that it was now time to retrieve the other part. A short while later, Ed was also released. However, the elf clarified that he was merely following the old man's orders. Ed expressed that he didn't mind earning their trust, as humans and elves would remain merely commercial partners. Son Yuk embraced both of them, urging them to stay calm, but the elf pushed him away, warning to keep his dirty hands off. At that moment, the old man approached with Ed's sword and handed it over. Ed wished to ask him some questions, specifically about Son Yuk's arrival 3 years prior and how they could cause such a return. The old man challenged whether it could be done the same way he came, since the World Tree should still be connected to that other realm. Ed explained that they first found the portal near a lake and believed the place of emergence was close to the royal palace. The old man suggested that might not be the case, since the connection of the World Tree begins at its roots. Confused, Ed asked what this meant. The old man clarified that the tree in Son Yuk's world and in his were connected by the same roots. In other words, following the energy within the tree could lead to the passage. Because the roots end at Mount Apito, many individuals occasionally emerge there. He further mentioned that if Ed maintained a good relationship with the pterodrones, it would be worthwhile to ask them. These beetles appeared out of nowhere because they are workers of the World Tree, following its roots. Ed acknowledged that made sense, recalling a time when they appeared right in front of the village. Grateful, Ed said they would seek assistance from the beetles. The old man noted that trade routes are typically infested with monsters. Ed responded that they lacked many soldiers but planned to improve that over time. Then, the old man requested Gruler's help, explaining that to ensure everything proceeded smoothly, he needed to send someone trustworthy. Son Yuk chuckled, remarking that the old man was quite clever, and as a result, Brawler had no choice but to accompany them. Ed thanked him, and Son Yuk said he would help the elf socialize. The old man approached Gruler, emphasizing the critical importance of his role in restoring the village of Greyer. Grueler agreed, and they set out. They mounted a wolf, though the creature looked eager to hurry. Curious, Ed asked where they were headed, since this route differed from their previous journey. The elf explained that the area was teeming with griffins, making underground tunnels a safer option. However, Son Yuk mentioned that the beetles had already taken care of the problem. Once again, Brawler couldn't believe his eyes, staring at the strange contraption of copper pipes and flowing liquid. The elf, with a calm and confident smile, simply told him they would see if it truly worked. Soon, they arrived at a hidden cavern, a place once used by the guardians of the World Tree, back when its safety was unquestioned. Sung Yuk marveled at having someone as reliable as Willie nearby. The elf tersely told him to stop teasing, claiming he only did so out of concern for the old one. He warned that even though the area appeared secure, they should remain alert, as dangers could always be lurking silently. He then inquired whether the legendary Tree of Life really existed, as he had always thought it to be a myth. Brawler scoffed, declaring that humans were nothing more than mere dust in the presence of the mighty tree, and their existence insignificant. Suddenly, the sword on Siyu's back began to shimmer with an intense glow. Brawler demanded to inspect the weapon. As he drew it from her, a blinding light engulfed them all. The dazzling radiance was so intense it momentarily stunned everyone. Growler murmured that he had felt the power emanating from the sword, confirming it was no illusion. He explained that the blade was revered as a divine artifact, imbued with the essence of the god of architects. Sung Yuk, already aware of the sword's extraordinary nature, sought to understand why it was suddenly glowing. Growler responded that the bright illumination was a sign that something within the cave demanded the sword's power. The scene shifted swiftly to one, unleashing a fierce burst of flames upon an advancing horde of skeletons, cutting down their ranks with relentless precision. One skeletal enemy found a gap in the flames and charged, but he intercepted it and defeated all three in a swift strike. The group, exhausted from the endless onslaught of monsters, fought long into the battle, feeling as if the chaos would never end. Guan Man, the maniac, stepped forward and ordered everyone to stand back, so he could take them all on at once. Concentrating his energy into his staff, he announced that he would finish the enemy with a single blow. As he prepared to release a fiery stream, a torrent of lava swept through the cavern, sweeping away the monsters and clearing the battlefield. The group, battered yet victorious, congratulated each other on their hard-fought triumph. Feeling a surge of pride, Guan Man declared they simply had to wait for his skill to recharge. Just then, Jijin shouted that something was behind her. She turned around to see a shadow looming, revealing a skeleton wrapped in a cloak of purple. Ready to attack, the creature's menacing aura froze her blood. Fortunately, Jijin intervened just in time, instinctively defending her friend. The skeleton struck her and sent her flying against the cavern wall, leaving her vulnerable. A member of their party rushed to her side, barely saving her from a deadly slash. As the skeleton turned to face the others, their tank called for everyone to stay alert. Sun Juhan quickly cast a spell, summoning a barrier of paper sheets that began to envelop the skeletal foe. The knight asked if everyone was safe. Guan, apparently overwhelmed more by shock than injury, had fainted. His companion tried to rouse him, but he was sweating profusely, still shaken from the encounter. Meanwhile, the powerful monster struggled to free itself from the paper prison. Sunjong admitted that his magic was not strong enough to contain it permanently. The healer hurried over to Jijin, asking if she was all right. She, still confused, couldn't comprehend why such a formidable creature as a high-ranking monster was present in the cavern. Though, suddenly, an ominous sensation hinted at a greater danger lurking nearby. Amidst a swirl of ancient blessings granted by the guardians of the World Tree, Jean acquired a sacred scroll of transformation. Een initially found herself baffled by what she had just witnessed. Unexpectedly, a gentle green breeze encircled her, causing her movement speed to double and her attack pace to increase by half. Furthermore, thanks to a passive wind effect dubbed Victory's Breath, she managed to restore a portion of her health. In confessed she was uncertain about the nature of these sudden changes but recognized that, for the first time, she seemed to hold a real chance. These phenomena occurred because Jia had expended essence to ensure their effects. Meanwhile, the group was protected by a shimmering barrier, fortifying their defenses as Ian prepared to face the boss. Jia understood that even with the blessing bestowed upon them, victory wouldn't be assured. Fortunately, her encounter with elven herbs empowered her to craft additional scrolls. When the skeletal foe struck the tank's shield with a heavy blow, a gray-haired young man asked one if he was okay. One nodded, acknowledging that he was fine but admitted they had been caught off guard. Turning sharply, he emphasized the urgent need for aid, as neither of them alone could withstand the onslaught. Fuming, she vowed she would reduce their enemy to ashes. With renewed resolve, she and the others joined the fray. The massive skeleton nearly struck Ian, but she dodged swiftly, leaping aside. Unfortunately, her sword was unable to pierce the creature's armor. Their only hope was to target its joints. One instructed Suyin to create an opening for Jia. Once more, Jia activated the Sticky Pages spell, aiming to weaken the skeleton. As the foe raised its massive axe to strike, Jia cast her magic, triggered by the scroll and a blazing fireball, colliding with the enemy in a devastating burst. The team wondered if they had managed to turn the tide but soon realized that, although the damage dealt was significant, it might not suffice. Ian, however, understood that her magic had been far more impactful than mere damage. It had created multiple swords ready to attack when combined with Jia's blessing. She lunged forward and struck the skeleton's arm, but to her dismay, her attack failed to penetrate the armor, leaving her hanging in midair with no way to react. The skeleton struck her again in the stomach, flinging her away. The group stood in confusion, uncertain how they could overcome such a formidable foe. In a desperate move, Jia began using her essence anew to bolster everyone's strength. Buff windows appeared for the team, but Jia knew these enhancements wouldn't last long. From a distance, Guan watched the battle, stating that she was the last hope they had. Suddenly, a streak of light tore through the cave's darkness. The skeleton turned, sensing imminent danger. A small wolf from Sunuk bit into its shoulder, and Jia's face lit up with excitement, recognizing the arrival of an important ally. As the skeleton struggled to free itself from the wolf's grip, someone leaped down from the top of the cave. Sung-yuk, eyes filled with anger. The attack struck exactly where the wolf had bitten. The creature's arm was severed, falling to the ground. The group wondered aloud about this new arrival, and Guan confirmed their suspicions. Sung-yuk had reappeared after more than 3 years. Yet, the young warrior was also battered and weary. Realizing that he needed to do more, the skeletal enemy charged forward with his axe. An attack exploded upon impact, releasing a burst of purple energy upon the ground. Sung-yuk's sword shimmered with a matching glow. As Ian lay incapacitated nearby, it was clear that the battle was far from over and that the outcome still hung in the balance. In the dim shadows of the collapsing chamber, one ran frantically, his mind racing with questions about his exact whereabouts. Confused and desperate, he called out, seeking answers about the others present in that strange place. Meanwhile, the skeletal figure that had been looming menacingly above raised its axe, releasing a pulse of crimson energy from the ground beneath it. Several more skeletons emerged, their bones rattling as they advanced. The healer, working tirelessly, insisted he was doing everything possible, yet Ian remained unconscious and unresponsive. Concerned, the two allies decided to shield her while others engaged with the formidable boss ahead. One invoked his magic to cut down the newly resurrected skeletons, while the knight fought bravely, swinging his sword against the ancient bones. The skeleton retaliated fiercely, attempting to strike the knight with its axe, but he managed to evade the blow and countered, delivering a solid strike to the creature's arm. However, each of these attacks barely left a scratch on the creature's resistant shell. Sung-yuk suggested that if slicing was ineffective, pulverizing would suffice. Concentrating his energy, he activated a skill designed to disable the enemy's weapons and equipment, but the skeleton responded by charging its axe, now crackling with violet energy. Once again, Sungyuk was thrown to the ground, battered and battered. The others continued to be thrown from side to side, unable to stay steady. This time, the skeleton pressed its assault further, aiming to deliver the final blow, damage now visible on its shoulder where a crack had formed. Sungyuk realized that the creature was at least at a level comparable to disaster itself, and he sprinted towards it. Seizing the opportunity, one unleashed an explosive spell that struck the monster head-on. Yet, the beast seemed unfazed, not retreating but instead re-engaging with Sungyuk, the purple energy coursing violently through the cave once more. After the explosion, the area was filled with thick smoke, and Sungyuk was nearly struck on the head by Ed's axe, who appeared suddenly and had managed to halt the skeleton's assault. Sungyuk muttered that Ed had arrived too late and overheard someone whisper that the creature's weak point was its core. Ed recognized the voice as that of the apostle and quickly conveyed this crucial information to Sungyuk. High above, Jaya watched everything unfold from her secluded world, sadly limited to using her blessing once again. She prepared her ink, hoping for a lucky breakthrough. Writing a new incantation in her book with eager anticipation, she whispered that this spell was perfect for her. Suddenly, Sungyuk sensed a change, a blessing bestowed by the workers, an aura that forced his attacks to land unconditionally for 5 seconds. Struggling to maintain his grip on the monstrous foe, he activated his aura once more and was forced to retreat, now enveloped in a double layer of power. Sungyuk and the wolf charged at the skeleton, their combined strike swift and decisive. The first blow hit the creature's abdomen, reaching its core with a single touch. The skeleton trembled and began to crumble, disintegrating into dust and fragments. Watching the monster dissolve, Sungyuk wondered whether the battle was truly over. In a sudden turn, all the remaining monsters also vanished into nothingness, as if erased from existence. Jia celebrated this victory from her vantage point, while Sungyuk collapsed onto the ground, drained from exhaustion. At that moment, Ed approached, offering a nod and saying he owed him one. Helping him to his feet, Ed remarked that Sungyuk seemed familiar with those involved. Sunjong chuckled softly, hinting at some shared history, though the details remained unspoken. The group had long known of Sungyuk's existence, yet their understanding of him remained incomplete. Suddenly, they gathered around a seemingly unconscious Yin. Without warning, Yin's eyelids fluttered open, eyes brimming with tears as she saw Sungyuk. Overcome with emotion, she reached out and embraced him tightly. He apologized for his long absence, explaining he had just returned from the beyond. His words stirred excitement in Jia, who believed he had come back from a mystical realm, while the land's terrain seemed confused by the sudden turn of events. At that moment, a luminous window appeared before Jia, revealing a secret tunnel that had become clear, a sign that the restoration of the world tree would soon accelerate. From a distance, the scream of Ark-Phut Jia echoed through the air. Jia wondered if Ark-Phut was another semi-divine being, a suspicion reinforced by the appearance of a radiant golden unicorn descending from the sky. Diem and Greyer watched closely, pondering how to capture such a swift creature. They brainstormed tirelessly, knowing that conventional plans were unlikely to succeed. The creature, evidently alert to their intentions, appeared to have already moved to another mountain. It was clear they needed a different approach to halt it. Suddenly, Jia heard barking outside. As he approached the door, he asked what the two others were doing there. A strange golden light flickered past him, revealing what seemed to be a horse. The way Diem and Greyer reacted indicated that it was a semi-divine creature, recognized as Ark's mount. From their vantage point on the mountain, they debated whether to attempt communication, but Ark was too swift. Before long, the unicorn disappeared from sight. In an instant, Ark stopped and reappeared face to face with Jia. Without warning, the creature charged toward him. Jia was startled. It was an unusual occurrence, for he had never seen Ark act in such a way before. Suddenly, it seemed as if he was waking up once more in the forest. It was as if Ark was calming the monster, allowing it to unwind in the middle of the field. Jia approached gently, stroking the creature and remarking on how adorable it was. From a distance, The two beasts pondered what name Jia might assign to the creature. Jia brought Puni into the garden and decided to name him Pan. The creature, perhaps irritated by the unoriginal name, dashed off in frustration. Meanwhile, Jia reflected on how different Pan seemed in his semi-divine form. Soon, Pan returned carrying a handful of leaves in his mouth. Jia quickly recognized them as a new type of herb, realizing they might be useful. Grateful, he rewarded Pan with a generous handful of carrots. Behind the trees, Biam and Gruler watched quietly. Ark, frustrated by their proximity to the carrots, warned them to stay back. A brief argument ensued, but ultimately, everyone sat together. Jia held the herbs, contemplating making red ink. He imagined that particular color symbolized strength and aggression. Perhaps he could craft some sort of weapon with it. After some time, the ink was ready. Reclining, Jia wondered what he might say to everyone when they saw the pile of ink the next day. Back at his shop the following morning, Jia realized he couldn't keep so many creatures confined there. Suddenly, a mysterious door appeared. Curious, he stepped closer and saw that it led to a strange grassy field. The door was marked with an infinity symbol, which Jia guessed might be connected to the world tree. Son Yuk and Jean entered the shop while Jia was overjoyed to receive them. Son Yuk, however, seemed unaware of what had transpired. He was unaware of who he truly was. Yet the name Jia-in echoed clearly in his mind. Grateful for all the assistance he had received, Jean expressed his thanks, but Jia-in insisted it was nothing and dismissed it modestly. Jean, however, persisted, unable to fully accept the gesture without genuine gratitude. Jia-in merely smiled and welcomed them to stay, offering them a moment to rest and refresh. During their conversation, she inquired about the bunny, questioning where Jean had obtained it. As always, he refused to reveal the source, stating it was something he couldn't disclose. Their dialogue revealed that Son Yuk often spoke at length about a different realm, a dimension beyond their immediate world. Jia-in believed that peace might persist for a while longer. Yet suddenly, the peace was shattered by an unforeseen threat. In the forest, young griffins, recently hatched from eggs, started attacking the trees and the crops, endangering the whole ecosystem. The other animals, exhausted from playing with the young creatures, had no choice but to watch in concern. As Jia-in pondered how to handle this sudden crisis, she noticed the pterodrone nearby. She summoned a knight, suggesting that perhaps relocating the griffins was the best solution. She showed him a section of the map, indicating a potentially safer area for these creatures. The knight gathered the young griffins and produced a signaling sound, testing if they would follow. To their surprise, the griffins responded eagerly and flew after him. As they took off, a window appeared before Jia-in, informing her that she was leading her legion toward a sacred sanctuary vital for the health of Janina's ecosystem. Her skills in animal management and her blessing of the ancient tree had risen to level 3, unlocking the sanctuary's access. Now, she could consume ether to unlock a new ability, although it left her severely exhausted. She perceived this as a final, risky move, a desperate effort to gain an advantage. When she attempted to activate the ability on herself, she realized there were no skills capable of awakening in her. However, she noticed that pterodromes could awaken abilities by absorbing powers from other creatures, provided those abilities were compatible. Creatures unfit for their bodies would require transformation, which excited Jia-in. She saw the potential to assist hunters in battles through this method. Determined to explore this development further, she required 500 essences to access the sanctuary. After paying the cost, the fog lifted, and she wondered if she could carry anything valuable into the sacred space. Yet, when she approached the nearby river, the system issued a warning. Her actions had caused a colossal wave. She realized her choices now directly impacted the environment, and the system offered to guide her on what the land needed for 100 essences. She paid and learned that developing the terrain was the first step, with worms suggested as an ideal resource. Puzzled about where to find them, she noticed the pterodromes would handle that task, a smile touching her lips as she trusted they would succeed. Suddenly, the system announced the unlocking of a new world, parting the fog to reveal a distant region. From afar, she observed a strange creature, a hybrid resembling a praying mantis fused with a crab. Recalling a recent headline, she remembered that such beings required many hunters to hunt safely. Immediately, she dispatched an army of pterodrobes to Jasuma, where they noticed the creatures were using fragments of the world tree as shields. Despite the bizarre tactics, Jia-in considered that this strategy might have a chance to succeed if employed correctly, giving her hope amid the chaos. As the chaos unfolded, the monstrous entities began to strike the defenders with relentless fury. Jaya was struck by the sight, his comrades taking blow after brutal blow, yet they refused to yield. Instead, they retreated into the shadows to recover. Remembering some potent elixirs stored away in the cabin, Jaya swiftly dashed back and poured them into the mouths of his allies. Almost immediately, their wounds closed and vitality surged through their bodies. Restored and brimming with renewed strength, they prepared to face the monsters once more. Suddenly, the abominations unleashed a powerful shockwave, an aggressive surge that slammed directly into the group. Out of the billowing smoke, the knight emerged with swift precision, slicing through 3 of the monsters in a single, fluid motion. Jaya felt a flicker of hope. The elixirs had proven effective. Perhaps victory was within reach. Then, he noticed the knight's body emanating a radiant glow. Curious and intrigued, Jaya wondered if the knight had absorbed a new ability. The knight approached him, kneeling in respect, a gesture that unleashed a deafening roar, creating a shockwave that rippled across the forest trees. Jaya's excitement grew. Seeing such strength awakened a sense of awe. The small creature beside him looked equally impressed by the newfound power. For them, it had been yet another day filled with achievement. Later, back in their hideout, they discussed plans for a trip to the coast. One of them insisted, mentioning he hadn't visited the seaside in quite some time, and that it might be a good idea. When they asked about the timing, a vehicle suddenly pulled up in front of the shop, and someone announced their departure immediately. Jaya was surprised. He hadn't expected it to be so soon. The person explained that summer was too fleeting to wait. The weather was warm, and the days were short. The vehicle was packed beyond capacity, but Jaya nodded in agreement. The more, the merrier. Still, he hadn't imagined that Guan and his guildmate Sanan would also join them. Curious, Jaya asked where Guan had found a PN in Korea. Guan replied he had stumbled upon it by chance inside a dungeon. After some time, they arrived at the beach. They watched the sunset for a while, soaking in the peaceful beauty of the evening. Later, the group was called back to the hotel. During this quiet moment, Jaya reflected that sometimes, simple nights like these are exactly what you need. Leaning on the balcony, he gazed up at the moon's luminous glow. Suddenly, Guan called him, asking about the like, a mysterious element that helps Maz create engaging content for his followers. Intrigued, Jaya activated a small, mischievous notification bell. He admitted that making this video had been particularly challenging, but since the content was so valuable, he didn't want to let it go unwatched. Now, he needed to leave, sending warm regards to everyone.